Am I seeing things? There's actually a fourth-level ruler among your people. The hooked-nosed man raised an eyebrow, then began to laugh. Ha ha! Is there no one left in the Life Palace? They actually sent a fourth-level ruler to join in the fun? Are they here to be cannon fodder? His loud laughter attracted the attention of many experts. Fourth-level ruler? That's true. The Tarot ruins are filled with ultimate rulers. There are even many peak existences amongst them. Why would a fourth-level ruler like him come here? A fourth-level ruler wants to enter the Tarot ruins? Is he courting death? Many experts began to laugh at him. It was normal that the Tarot vestige attracted too many experts. Even an ordinary ultimate ruler would not be looked at in the Tarot vestige. As for a fourth-level ruler, no one would be interested in him. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes when he sensed the strange gazes around him, but he did not say anything. Ninth Culpa King, I sympathize with you. You were not well liked in the Life Palace because you had not been able to break through to become a supreme being. Now that you have the chance to come to the Tarot ruins, you have to bring a burden with you. Ha ha ha. The hooked-nosed man laughed willfully. Silver Rock, if you are itching for a fight now, I don't mind fighting with you here. Ninth Culpa King looked at the hooked-nosed man coldly. Let's wait for the battle inside the relic. The hooked-nosed man laughed dryly. Without further ado, he turned and left. The rulers from the various factions around them also looked away. Ninth Culpa King, it looks like we have already been targeted before we even entered the Tarot relic, said Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves in a deep voice. Humph, he's just a defeated opponent. 300 years ago, he narrowly escaped death in front of me. This time, if he dares to come knocking on our door again, I'll just kill him, said Ninth Culpa King. I hope so, said Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves with a cold smile. He knew about the hawk-nosed man, Ruler Silver Rock. In terms of fame, Ruler Silver Rock was indeed not as famous as Ninth Culpa King in the universe. However, he was definitely not weak. In particular, his comprehension of the universe principles was said to have reached an extremely high level. With the addition of some special secret techniques, Ruler Silver Rock was definitely ranked in the top 20 among the countless ultimate rulers in the vast universe. He was an extremely difficult ultimate ruler to deal with. If it was a one-on-one battle, neither Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves nor Ruler Violet Eye would necessarily be a match for Ruler Silver Rock. They had yet to enter the Tarot ruins, but they had already been targeted by such a powerful ruler. This was naturally not a good thing for their team. Alright, cut the crap. Prepare to enter the Tarot ruins, Ninth Culpa King said. The group of 7 had already arrived at the entrance of the Tarot ruins. In the void, a vertical bronze door pressed across the starry sky. The huge door had the words Tarot engraved on it. Other than that, there were also countless mysterious inscriptions on the side of the huge door, emitting an ancient aura. This was the entrance of the Tarot ruins. One only needed to step through the huge bronze door to enter the Tarot ruins. The 6 of you stay in the vestige and follow me. Otherwise, if you get into trouble, I won't have the time to save you. Do you understand? Especially you, Jian Wushuang. Just as they were about to enter the vestige, Ninth Culpa King, who was walking at the front, put his hands behind his back and said with a cold face, I'll go in. Jian Wushuang nodded expressionlessly in response to Ninth Culpa King's warning. However, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others did not seem to take it seriously. Zitong, we are both outstanding experts among the ultimate rulers. Is there a need to let Ninth Culpa King protect us? What has his attitude toward us been all this while? Humph. Let's not talk about whether we will encounter any trouble in the Tarot ruins. Even if we do, just the 2 of us working together should be enough to settle it. Why does he need to be Ninth Culpa King? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves sent a message to Ruler Violet Eye. It was obvious that there was something amiss. Thousand Leaf, cut it out. Don't you know about the Ninth Culpa King? He had always been arrogant and did not take us seriously in the Life Palace. It was normal for him to speak a little harshly now. After all, he is stronger than us. Just let him be, said the Ruler Violet Eye with a smile. However, there was a strange feeling in his tone for some reason. Haha, you were defeated by a 3rd-level ruler in the trial ground. How can you not be strong? The two looked at each other and smiled in tacit understanding. They did not say anything else. A moment later, under the lead of the ninth Culpa King, a group of 7 people stepped through the bronze door of the Tarot ruins. The 7 people first passed through a pitch-black void before their eyes lit up. Then, they saw that they had landed in a vast plain. This is the Tarot ruins? It is indeed huge. I have clearly released all my soul power and the range of coverage is quite vast. However, there isn't a single person within the range of my soul coverage, said Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. There should be rulers everywhere in the Tarot ruins. Furthermore, the branches should be quite dense. An ultimate ruler's soul coverage area was naturally very vast. However, no one was found in the soul coverage area of Emperor Thousand Leaves. This meant that the Tarot vestige was indeed very vast. TSK, the spiritual chi here is also quite dense. If you cultivate here, 1 day of cultivation is equivalent to 3 days of cultivation in the outside world. The ruler Violet, I said with a smile. The other members of the team were also observing their surroundings. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, raised his eyebrows as soon as he stepped into the Tarot vestige. This place is rich in the universe origin of sword principle. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He could sense that the buildings, mountains, and rivers in the Tarot vestige must have been created by Supreme Tarot with a single sword strike. Every mountain in the Tarot vestige was extremely smooth. It was as if it had been cut by someone with one sword strike. He could not help but exclaim in amazement. Supreme Emperor Tarot was so powerful that he could create his own world with one sword strike. Jian Wushuang, among the 7 of us, the Tarot vestige should have the greatest opportunity for you. Divine Marquis Qingfeng, who was walking beside Jian Wushuang, suddenly said with a smile. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, looked at Divine Marquis Qingfeng and asked, Divine Marquis, what do you mean? Jian Wushuang, you may not know this, but Supreme Emperor Tarot used to be a supreme being at the top level. But there is still a slight gap between him and Invincible Supreme Being. Divine Marquis Qingfeng explained with a smile. The reason why Supreme Tarot became an Invincible Supreme Being and became so famous in the vast universe is largely because of the Tarot Divine Sword in his hand. Divine Marquis Qingfeng said. Tarot Divine Sword? Jian Wushuang was curious. He did not know much about Ruler Tarot other than that he was an invincible ruler-level universe overlord. Divine Marquis Qingfeng nodded. He replied, No one has been more talented in sword principle than Ruler Tarot. In the universe at that time, there were many supreme experts who died under his sword. Even after hundreds of chaos cycles, countless sword principle experts have emerged in the universe. But under the illumination of Supreme Emperor Tarot, they all seem to be overshadowed. No one can be called the supreme ruler of sword principle anymore. And the divine sword of Tarot is the help of Supreme Emperor Tarot's illustrious name in the universe. Can be said that without the divine sword of Tarot, there would be no Supreme Emperor Tarot. Of course, without Supreme Emperor Tarot, there would naturally be no famous divine sword of Tarot. The two have achieved each other. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang nodded thoughtfully and asked, Divine Marquis Qingfeng, what about the Tarot Divine Sword? Divine Marquis Qingfeng pondered for a moment. He replied, I don't know. Some people say that the Tarot Divine Sword was buried in the ruins with Supreme Tarot's death. Others say that the person who killed Supreme Tarot took it away. Anyway, there have been all kinds of theories over the past 10,000 years, but they are basically not believable. After saying that, Divine Marquis Qingfeng patted Jian Wushuang's shoulder. He smiled and said, Jian Wushuang, you don't have to think about the divine sword. Even if you are really lucky and found the divine sword, it's not something a 4th-level ruler like you can have. I understand. Jian Wushuang smiled at him. It was just as Divine Marquis Qingfeng had said. Even if he got the Tarot Divine Sword, he would be hunted down by the entire universe before he could warm up. By then, he would not only be at the ruler level but even the supreme experts would be tempted and desperately want to get the Tarot Divine Sword. Well, let's go. It's too far away to talk about this. Divine Marquis Qingfeng smiled. He said, Although I haven't heard of any great danger hidden in the Tarot ruins yet, The absence of principles is actually the greatest danger. As long as you obtain any treasure, you will most likely be attacked by a group of people. I heard that over the past 10,000 years, many powerful ultimate rulers have been killed in the ruins. Although Ninth Culpa King is arrogant, he doesn't have any bad intentions. Moreover, his battle strength is extremely terrifying. We just need to follow him closely. If we are lucky enough to get lucky in the ruins, we will be able to escape unscathed. Jian Wushuang nodded. Although he did not have a good impression of Ninth Culpa King, he had to admit that Ninth Culpa King was indeed the most powerful among the 7 of them. The 7 of them talked as they walked. Although they did not travel on purpose, their speed was not slow. Soon, they passed through the plain and arrived at a group of palaces. Seeing this, a flash of excitement appeared in the eyes of Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others. They were about to search for something. Ninth Culpa King said coldly, "This group of palaces is so conspicuous. People have been coming and going for more than 10,000 years. Needless to say, they have been searched thoroughly. What else can you find apart from wasting time?" Hearing that, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves was furious. He snorted and said, "Ninth Culpa King, since you are the leader of our team, what plans do you have?" Ninth Culpa King looked at him and said, "This time we have 3 purposes. First, we need to find the entrance of the 2nd floor that Zhufeng King mentioned. This is the most important purpose of our trip to the Tarot Ruins. If I am right, it should be a space enchantment, and the place should be extremely hidden. Otherwise, it would be impossible for only Zhufeng King and the others to find it in these 10,000 years. Therefore, we only need to avoid the crowded place and look in a remote direction. The second reason is to investigate the cause of Zhufeng King's death. Along the way, I have thought about it carefully. There are only 2 reasons for Zhufeng King's death. Either there are some terrifying restrictions at the entrance of the 2nd level, which caused Zhufeng King's entire team to be annihilated in an instant. He didn't even have time to send out the information. Or he was targeted by someone and killed to silence him. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. The strength of the Zhufeng King's team was obvious. If they wanted their team to be completely annihilated, and they did not even have the time to spread the news, then what kind of person was the one who made the move? Hence, these 2 guesses made everyone believe the former one more. The Ninth Culpa King ignored everyone's expressions. He continued, "Furthermore, investigating the cause of death of Zhufeng King and company does not conflict with the first point. As long as we can find the cause of death of Zhufeng King and company, we should be able to obtain information on the 2nd level of Tarot Ruins. As for the third point, it is to search for the opportunities in the ruins. However, this Tarot Ruins is vast. Although various factions in the universe have been searching here for more than 10,000 years, they have not found many opportunities. In other words, a large number of opportunities are still buried in the ruins. We do not need to be too anxious. Finding the cause of death of Zhufeng King and company and finding the entrance to the 2nd level of Tarot Ruins is the most urgent matter. Therefore, I advise everyone to give up on the idea of searching for opportunities." With that said, Ninth Culpa King glanced at Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Unintentionally or unintentionally, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' expression immediately turned ugly. Ninth Culpa King had said that in front of everyone in the team, yet he was looking at him with such a gaze. The meaning was too obvious. It looked like he was trying to persuade everyone, but in fact he was warning him. "Ninth Culpa King, what do you mean?" Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' voice turned cold. "You know what I mean." Ninth Culpa King glanced at him indifferently. "You!" Monarch Thousand Leaf was about to get angry, but he was stopped by the ruler Violet Eye. The ruler Violet Eye shook his head slightly, indicating that he should not act impulsively. Seeing this, Monarch Thousand Leaf snorted coldly and turned his head away. He did not want to look at Ninth Culpa King anymore. Among the 7 people, Jian Wushuang was like an old monk meditating. His expression did not change much. Ninth Culpa King's speculation was similar to his. Although he also wanted to obtain the opportunities in the Tarot Ruins, he did not force it. After all, opportunities and opportunities were about the word fate. It was impossible to force it. Moreover, if an extraordinary treasure really appeared in the Taro ruins, it would cause a sensation. There was no need for them to take the initiative to look for it. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang, ninth Culpa King, and the other three had been in the Taro vestige for 10 years. There were many rulers in the Taro vestige. Because there were no principles, there were frequent fights. Even if there was no enmity between them, they might fight each other because they coveted the treasures on each other's bodies. Jian Wushuang and the others had seen such fights many times in the past 10 years. However, during these 10 years, no ignorant rulers dared to provoke them. After all, their 7-man team was very strong, especially with ninth Culpa King in charge. His existence alone was enough to make most of the rulers' teams in the Taro vestige not dare to attack them. During the past 10 years, Jian Wushuang and the others spent most of their time asking around for information about Zhufeng King. Zhufeng King was an almost invincible existence among the ultimate rulers. He was famous and knew many people. It was easy for Jian Wushuang and the others to ask around. In the past 10 years, they had received some information. However, the news made them look a little strange. According to the rulers in the Taro ruins, the team led by Zhufeng King had caused a great storm in the Taro ruins 3,000 years ago. However, the team had disappeared 3,000 years ago. It was as if they had disappeared from the world. Disappeared 3,000 years ago? It would have been fine if only one person had said that. The key was that they had asked many rulers along the way and received the same answer. Jian Wushuang and the others could not help but ponder. Zhufeng King had asked for help from the Life Palace 1,000 years ago. Only 3 months after he had asked for help, they had set off from the Life Palace and traveled to the Taro ruins. Where did they go in the next 2,000 years? During those 2,000 years, they kept in contact with the Divine Life Palace. But the Divine Life Palace did not receive any news from them. Only the last message for help. What was going on? Jian Wushuang and the others could not figure it out for the time being. In addition, during the past 10 years, something had happened in the 7-man team. The conflict between Emperor Thousand Leaves and ninth Culpa King had worsened rapidly, and it was starting to smell of gunpowder. Ninth Culpa King was proud and arrogant. He did not think much of many rulers. Even though Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Purple Eye were almost invincible among rulers, they were still nothing in the eyes of ninth Culpa King. However, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye were more or less proud to be able to reach the ruler realm. This was especially so for Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. He was unwilling to be under anyone. It would be strange if such two people were in a small team. It would be strange if there were no conflicts. In a towering hall, 7 people were sitting cross-legged. Humph. How long will it take to find them like this? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' expression was gloomy. He stared at ninth Culpa King and said with a sneer, "What second level? It's just their guesses." As for Zhufeng King and company, they were probably targeted by someone before they were wiped out. And since those people were prepared to attack, they naturally would not leave any traces behind. We naturally could not find anything. Ninth Culpa King gave Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves an indifferent glance. "What are you trying to say?" Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves narrowed his eyes slightly. He said, "There are many opportunities and treasures in the Taro vestige. We should try to find them. Even if we can't find them ourselves, with our team strength we can kill other teams or rulers in the Taro vestige. At that time we can also gain a lot. As for the Zhufeng King team, let's put it aside for now." After saying that, Emperor Thousand Leaves glanced at Jian Wushuang and the others and said with a smile, "What do you think of my suggestion?" As soon as he said that, everyone could not help feeling a little restless. After all, the life and death of Zhufeng King did not matter to them at all. They came to the Taro vestige for the opportunity. "I think Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' suggestion is feasible." Ruler Violet Eye immediately agreed with a smile. "I think, yes, the second level of the ruins is something that cannot be completely confirmed. It's not that we don't want to look for the second level spatial enchantment, but we should indeed spend more time searching for treasures. As for the Zhufeng King team's death, we can slowly investigate it," said the veteran ultimate ruler. The 9 young ruler said with his head lowered, "That's right. Ninth Culpa King. It's not that we are not investigating the cause of Zhufeng King's death. We are just taking a breather and searching for treasures first. I heard that not long ago, an upper-grade nomological cardinal treasure appeared in the south. Why don't we go and take a look together? Said the Qinan ruler. 3 of the 7 agreed with Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' words, and a smile appeared on his face. He turned his eyes to Jian Wushuang again and said with a smile, Jian Wushuang, what do you think? He believed that everyone would support him, except Divine Marquis Qingfeng, who had never fallen. At the same time, he was confident that when the 5 of them worked together to pressure Ninth Culpa King, even he would have to bow his head. Are you asking me? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Of course. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves nodded with a smile. In his opinion, there had always been a feud between Jian Wushuang and Ninth Culpa King, so there was no doubt that he would stand on his side. There are many opportunities and treasures in Tarot Vestige. It would be good if I could get them, but I'm not interested in killing other teams and rulers. Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. What? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' expression changed slightly. Even the Ninth Culpa King raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. Jian Wushuang, do you mean you don't want to come with us? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' expression was a little gloomy. The other rulers also narrowed their eyes. They had seen the feud between Jian Wushuang and the Ninth Culpa King. In the past 10 years, they had barely talked more than 3 times. Logically speaking, Jian Wushuang should hate the Ninth Culpa King. It was right for him to stand on their side. Yes. Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. Good. Jian Wushuang. Then you should waste your time here with Ninth Culpa King. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' face was completely unfriendly to Jian Wushuang. After a cold snort, he said, Let's go. With that, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves, Ruler Purple Eye, Ruler Nine Yang, and Ruler Qinan strode out of the hall. After the 4 of them left, the hall suddenly became quiet. After Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other 3 left, only Ninth Culpa King, Jian Wushuang, and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were left in the towering hall. Ninth Culpa King narrowed his eyes slightly and first glanced at Divine Marquis Qingfeng. Divine Marquis Qingfeng was gentle and had some conflicts with Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. So Ninth Culpa King was not surprised that he chose to stay. However, Jian Wushuang chose to stay, which surprised Ninth Culpa King. Jian Wushuang, why didn't you leave with Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others? Aren't you afraid that I'll take your middle-grade principal divine fruit if you stay here? After all, no one in this team can stop me from doing anything. Ninth Culpa King looked at Jian Wushuang. He said with a fake smile. Oh? Then you can try. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and a cold light flashed in them. Now that he had broken through to the 4th-level ruler realm, his strength had greatly increased, and he had the superior-grade principal armor given to him by Ruler Bloodwave. Although he was still no match for Ninth Culpa King if he wanted to leave, he was afraid that Ninth Culpa King would not be able to stay. Moreover, he knew very well that no matter how much Ninth Culpa King disliked him, he would never dare to attack him. After all, they were all members of the Life Palace. Once Ninth Culpa King attacked him, he only needed to directly send a message to Ruler Bloodwave. The consequences Ninth Culpa King would face were not something he could bear. Forget it. Since I lost to you in the trial field, I won't think about the middle-grade principal fruit anymore, Ninth Culpa King said with a wave of his hand. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang just smiled faintly. In fact, the reason why he did not leave with Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others was not only because he did not want to kill other teams of rulers and steal treasures for no reason, but also because of an extremely important reason. That was the character of Ninth Culpa King and Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Although Jian Wushuang and the other 2 had not been in the same team for a long time, he could more or less see some of their personalities. Apart from being arrogant and a little arrogant, the Ninth Culpa King could not be disliked in other aspects. However, it was different for Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Jian Wushuang had seen many of her small actions and thoughts in the team over the years. He could tell that she was very selfish and hypocritical. Moreover, her arrogance was no less than that of the Ninth Culpa King. In comparison, Jian Wushuang would rather stay with the Ninth Culpa King. All right, both of you. Divine Emperor Thousand leaves and the others have left. There are only 3 of us left in our team, and our strength has been greatly reduced. You should work together to explore the Taro ruins, Marquis Qingfeng said with a smile. Like Jian Wushuang, Marquis Qingfeng knew Emperor Qianya's character. He did not leave with them just now. Humph. It's just that 4 trash are missing. Ninth Culpa King snorted, disagreeing with him. Jian Wushuang and Marquis Qingfeng looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Then, the 3-man team continued to explore the Taro ruins, while at the same time, they kept asking about Zhufeng King's team. And on the other side, in the vast void, 2 ruler teams met. One of the 2 ruler teams was a 4-man team led by Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye. As for the other team, there were a total of 6 people. They were also ultimate rulers. There was clearly a large gap in the number of people on both sides. However, when the 6-man team saw Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other 3, their expressions turned extremely gloomy. The 6-man team came from the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom and was led by a pinnacle ultimate ruler, 8th Cloud Demon Lord. Life Palace's Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves, Ruler Violet Eye, 9 Yang Ruler and Qinan Ruler. 8th Cloud Demon Lord frowned. 4 of you? Why are you blocking our way? 8th Cloud Ruler, if I remember correctly, your team arrived at the Taro ruins more than 10,000 years ago, right? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves wore a strange smile. He looked at 8th Cloud Demon Lord and company. So what if it is? 8th Cloud Demon Lord said in a deep voice. Nothing. I just want to know what you have obtained in the Taro ruin over the past 10,000 years. Asked Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Humph. There are so many rulers who have ventured into the Taro ruin. Our team is not very strong. Even if we encounter an opportunity, we will not be able to snatch it. After more than 10,000 years, our team has obtained nothing, said 8th Cloud Demon Lord. Nothing? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves shook his head. I don't believe it. How about this? The 6 of you take out your interspatial rings and let us inspect them. If you really do not obtain any decent treasures, I'll let you leave. How about it? Bastard! 8th Cloud Fiend Ruler was instantly enraged. The other 4 ultimate rulers of the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom also glared angrily. He wanted them to take out their interspatial rings and let him investigate them? How was that possible? Haha! Since you are unwilling to hand over your interspatial rings, then you cannot blame us. The 3 of you kill. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' loud laughter spread out. With that said, a heaven-shaking aura instantly surged out of Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' body. His divine body suddenly expanded as he charged out. The ruler Violet Eye, 9 Yang Ruler, and Qinan, who stood beside him, gave a sinister laugh as they charged forward. The battle instantly erupted, and the intense battle did not last long. It ended in just a few moments. Although Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' team only had dead people, the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom had a total of 6 ultimate rulers. However, 4 of the 6 ultimate rulers were only close to the pinnacle level. As for the other 2, even the strongest 8th Cloud Demon Lord, they were only at the pinnacle ultimate ruler level. They were only on par with 9 Yang Ruler and Qinan Ruler. They were much weaker than Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye. With such a lineup, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves alone was enough to kill them all. Furthermore, the 4 of them had attacked at the same time. In just a few moments, 4 of the 6 ultimate rulers of the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom were killed on the spot. One of them was a pinnacle ultimate ruler. The remaining 8th Cloud Demon Lord and an ultimate ruler managed to escape by a fluke. After the battle, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and company gathered together to share the spoils of war. Haha, I knew it. The team from the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom has roamed the Taro ruins for more than 10,000 years. It's impossible that they did not gain anything. Look, we only killed 4 of them and even let the strongest 8th Cloud Fiend Ruler escape. But our gains are still extremely huge. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. The other 3, too, were delighted to cut off other dominators and plunder their treasures. This is not easy to see in the universe. After all, although there are many great beings in the universe, it is very difficult to gather so many powerful ultimate rulers under normal circumstances. Only now, when the tarot ruins appeared and restricted the entry of supreme experts, countless ultimate rulers swarmed over. Because there were too many rulers gathered, the killing became more frequent, so it became common to kill them halfway. The reason why Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye chose to part ways with Ninth Culpa King and Jian Wushuang was because of the restrictions of Ninth Culpa King. Ninth Culpa King was arrogant and disdained to kill the weaker ruler squads. He was mainly investigating the cause of the destruction of Zhufeng King's squads, but Monarch Thousand Leaf and the others could not help it. Now, as soon as the four of them were freed from the restriction of Ninth Culpa King, they immediately began to kill other ruler squads in the Tarot ruins. Moreover, they gained a lot from this attack. The demonic Rain Divine Kingdom is considered an ordinary one among the many divine kingdoms in the vast universe. The expert squads they sent over only have 6 ultimate rulers. Furthermore, there are only 2 pinnacle-level ultimate rulers. With such strength, they still dare to wander around the Tarot ruins, sneered Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. They were lucky in the past and did not encounter those powerful ruler squads. Unfortunately, now that they have encountered the 4 of us, they will immediately be defeated, said Violet Eye with a laugh. Unfortunately, we were unable to keep 8 Cloud Fiend Master. He is the leader of the 6-man squad of the Fiend Rain Divine Kingdom, a pinnacle Omega ruler. Over the past 10,000 years, many of the benefits they have gained in the Tarot ruins have probably been focused on him, said Ruler Ninyang. There's nothing we can do. Although 8 Cloud Fiend Master is only a pinnacle Omega ruler and his strength is far inferior to Violet Eye and me, his ability to survive is not too weak. Even if I were to join forces with Violet Eye, it would be very difficult to kill him, said Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Unfortunately, Divine Marquis Qingfeng is not with us. Otherwise, with his entanglement techniques, there is a chance of keeping 8 Cloud Demon Master here, said Violet Eye. Qingfeng? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves snorted coldly. Divine Marquis Qingfeng was only at the pinnacle ultimate ruler level, but he was best at entanglement techniques. In terms of entanglement, neither Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves nor Violet Eye was a match for Divine Marquis Qingfeng. If Divine Marquis Qingfeng was with them, they were very confident that they could keep 8 Cloud Demon Master. Qingfeng is an idiot. If he is willing to follow Ninth Culpa King, then let him continue. Jian Wushuang is just a 4th-level ruler. He is not even a cannon fodder in the Tarot ruins. If he follows us, we might be able to give him some benefits, but he wants to follow Ninth Culpa King. With Ninth Culpa King's arrogant and overbearing character, even if he really gets an opportunity, how could he be part of it? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves said with a sneer. The violet-eyed ruler and the other 2 looked at each other and nodded. Indeed, there was a reason why they had chosen to leave. The reason was because the Ninth Culpa King was extremely overbearing. If they followed the Ninth Culpa King, even if they were to obtain some great fortune, they might not be able to reap any benefits. Thus, it was better for them to part ways with the Ninth Culpa King. It would be better for them to go their own ways. Ignore them. Let's continue exploring the Tarot ruins. With our strength, there's nothing to be afraid of if we join forces as long as we do not encounter a ruler team from a top faction in the universe. Furthermore, even if we do encounter such a powerhouse team, the 4 of us will be able to protect ourselves if we join forces, said Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Immediately, the 4 of them continued exploring the Tarot ruins. In a flash, 50 years had passed. During these 50 years, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and company had been raiding other ruler squads in the ruins. With the 4 of them working together, many weaker ruler squads had suffered. Of course, although the 4 of them were raiding everywhere, they were also raiding targets. For example, rulers from large cosmic factions or powerful and famous ultimate rulers, they would not easily provoke them. With the 4 of them working together, there were few teams of experts in the Tarot ruins who could really do anything to them. Therefore, the 4 of them did well in the past 50 years and gained a lot of benefits. Interestingly, in the past 50 years, Jian Wushuang and the other 2 had met Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others once. Of course, this encounter did not cause much of a stir. After a few words of sarcasm, they went on their own. In a remote corner of the Taro ruins, Ninth Culpa King, Jian Wushuang, and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were inspecting the enchantment point that led to the second floor inch by inch. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang, Qingfeng, and Jian Wushuang looked up at the same time. They saw streaks of powerful long arcs rushing toward them at an astonishing speed in the surrounding void. Ninth Culpa King narrowed his eyes. In the next moment, his figure flashed and he was already in front of the ruler's team. The 5 people of the ruler's team immediately stopped. Who is it? The 5 people of the ruler's team were a little shocked and angry when they were stopped midway. As the Ninth Culpa King's figure gradually condensed in front of the 5, the hearts of the originally furious 5 suddenly trembled. Ninth Culpa King! Ninth Culpa King of the Life Palace! The teeth of the 5 members of the group were trembling. This time, the Taro ruins had appeared, and it was a large group of powerful ultimate rulers in the vast universe. Naturally, some of the more famous and powerful ones were well known. As for the Ninth Culpa King, he was undoubtedly one of the most famous of the many ultimate rulers in the universe. The 5 members of this squad of rulers were naturally able to recognize him. At the same time, they all knew the strength of the Ninth Culpa King. Without a doubt, just the Ninth Culpa King alone was enough to wipe out their squad of 5. They had no room to struggle at all. Seeing Ninth Culpa King standing in front of them, they were naturally terrified. 5 of you, looking at how anxious you are, where are you going? Ninth Culpa King looked over. Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng also appeared next to Ninth Culpa King. Jian Wushuang also noticed that the 5-man team of rulers was moving very fast. They were very anxious, as if they were in a hurry to go somewhere. The 5 rulers looked at each other in dismay when they heard the Ninth Culpa King's question. The superior ultimate ruler in the lead said seriously, "Ninth Culpa King, since you've met me, I won't hide it from you. We've just received news that a supreme-grade divine herb has appeared in Fengyang Valley. The birth of a divine medicine?" Jian Wushuang's expression changed. When this godly medicine appeared, it caused a huge commotion and attracted many experts. Among those experts who rushed over, some of them recognized this godly medicine and said that this supreme-grade godly medicine can be refined into a divine pill that can increase the chances of breaking through to the Supreme Being realm. The peak-level ultimate ruler said, "What did you just say?" The Ninth Culpa King's eyes suddenly burst out with a bright light. Both Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were shocked. They looked at each other in shock. Supreme-grade divine medicine was rare. In particular, this kind of divine medicine that could increase the chances of an ultimate ruler breaking through to the Supreme Being realm was extremely rare in the universe. Jian Wushuang was still a ruler of the 4th level, so he was not in a hurry to use the divine medicine to break through to the supreme level. However, it was a different story for the rulers of the ultimate level. That was breaking through to the Supreme Being realm. This was something that every ultimate ruler dreamed of. Even if this divine medicine could only slightly increase the chances of one breaking through to a higher level, it would be enough to drive all of the ultimate rulers crazy. Just like the Ninth Culpa King. The Ninth Culpa King had always been recognized as the #1 genius in the Divine Life Palace, at least before Jian Wushuang's arrival. However, over the years, the Ninth Culpa King's status in the Divine Life Palace had been getting lower and lower. It was because he had stayed at the level of an ultimate ruler for too long and the Divine Life Palace had given him enough resources and a price, but he had still not broken through to become a supreme. This had disappointed many higher-ups of the Divine Life Palace. All these years, the Ninth Culpa King had been enduring silently. Even though he had comprehended a terrifying killer move like the Divine Kingdom of One Thought, he had never revealed it. This was because he knew that only by breaking through to the supreme level would he truly rise to a whole new level. Otherwise, everything else would be useless. It could be said that among the many ultimate rulers in the Divine Life Palace, the Ninth Culpa King's desire to break through to the supreme level was the strongest. After all, he already had the battle strength of a supreme and had control of the one-thought divine kingdom. Once he broke through to the Supreme Being realm, he would definitely have the battle strength of a top-tier Supreme Being, and his future potential would be boundless. However, the crucial point was that he had been unable to break through after so many years. Even he himself was somewhat uncertain if it was possible for him to break through and become a supreme martial artist. And now there was a huge opportunity in front of him. It was the godly medicine that had just appeared. This was a divine herb that could be refined into a divine pill, a divine herb that could increase the chances of breaking through to the Supreme Being realm. Even if it only increased the chances of a breakthrough by 10%, it was definitely enough to make the ninth Culpa King go crazy. Is what you said true? The ninth Culpa King's eyes were burning as he stared at the 5 people in front of him. Of course it's true. Now that the news has spread, I reckon that many rulers have already rushed there. However, it should take some time for that godly medicine to appear. If you rush over now, you might be able to make it in time. The peak-level ultimate ruler said. Let's go. Let's hurry over. The ninth Culpa King growled in a low voice, and his speed instantly burst out. Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked at each other and followed without hesitation. The Taro ruins were vast and boundless, and many rulers of the universe had been wandering in the ruins for tens of thousands of years. Many places in the ruins had been named. For example, the Fengyang Canyon was the place where the Fengyang divine fruit had appeared. The Fengyang divine fruit was a rare treasure. However, he did not expect that an even more precious supreme-grade divine medicine would appear in the Fengyang Canyon not long after the Fengyang divine fruit appeared. Fengyang Canyon was not far from where the 3 of them were. With their speed, they arrived at Fengyang Canyon in less than an hour. The air above the huge Fengyang Canyon was already filled with people. Countless rulers were confronting each other, their swords drawn and bows bent. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Jian Wushuang and ninth Culpa King were not in a hurry to show themselves. Instead, they hid in a void and watched the scene from afar. There really are many experts. Jian Wushuang looked at the countless rulers that had gathered in front of him. Almost all of them were ultimate rulers, and many of them were already at the top of the ultimate rulers. There were more than 10 rulers who were almost invincible, like Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the ruler Violet Eye. Moreover, they had already shown their faces. Many others were probably like them, hiding in the surrounding void, waiting for an opportunity. The godly medicine is still there. The ninth Culpa King's eyes shone with unprecedented fierceness as he stared at the void in the middle of the canyon. There was a blood-colored divine medicine that was emitting a unique aura. The ninth Culpa King did not recognize this divine medicine at all. However, there were so many experts present, many of whom had extremely high attainments in natural treasures or some divine medicine. They were all so greedy for this divine medicine. Clearly, it was true that this godly medicine could increase the chances of rulers breaking through to the supreme realm after being refined into a divine pill. It seems like we're not late. However, there are so many rulers present, including the ruler teams from the Great Void Divine Hall and Blood Sky Hall. It won't be easy to get the divine medicine under the eyes of so many people. The ninth Culpa King narrowed his eyes. Although he was arrogant, he was not blindly conceited or stupid. The rulers' teams under the major powers of the universe had many extraordinary strengths. He naturally did not fear them one-on-one, but if they worked together, he would have a headache. One had to know that the rulers sent by the top powers of the universe could not be weak. Ninth Culpa King, your old friend, the ruler Silver Rock, is also there. Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked at the hook-nosed youth standing at the entrance of the valley and joked. He was rather relaxed. From the start, he knew that it was impossible for this godly medicine to fall into his hands. Therefore, he did not think about fighting for it. The ninth Culpa King snorted coldly and did not speak. Jian Wushuang looked at the peak ultimate rulers in Fengyang Canyon from afar and sighed. These ultimate rulers could wander in the ruins for tens of thousands of years without being plundered or killed, so they were not weak. For example, if he went all out, his fighting power could rival that of a top ultimate master. He could even fight with ultimate masters like Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Purple Eye Ruler, who were almost invincible. However, such power was obviously not at the top in Fengyang Canyon. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the rest didn't come. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Suddenly, he was startled. "If you guys don't want this godly medicine, then I'll take it." A sharp laugh suddenly sounded in the sky. "If you guys don't want this godly medicine, then I'll take it." Whoosh! For streaks of light could be seen flying over from a distance, shooting toward the Fengyang Canyon. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves? It's them. Jian Wushuang and the other two squinted their eyes in surprise. Foolish! When the ninth Kulpa King saw this scene, his face suddenly sank and he snorted coldly. Indeed, countless experts had gathered in the Fengyang Canyon. They were all eyeing the godly medicine floating in the center of the valley. The reason why there was no fierce battle yet was that everyone knew that whoever dared to make the first move at this critical moment would become the target of all. Even someone as strong as the ninth Kulpa King didn't dare to rush in rashly to snatch the divine medicine after arriving here. Instead, he stood in the void and watched, waiting for an opportunity. As for Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three, although they weren't weak, they weren't the best among the rulers' teams present. If the four of them attacked rashly, they might be attacked by a large number of experts. The bird that takes the lead is shot. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves should know. But why are they so afraid? Jian Wushuang frowned. Could it be that they have something to rely on? Although they were surprised, Jian Wushuang and the other two didn't move. They continued to watch the scene from afar. The moment Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three joined forces to dash over, the rulers of the forces who were originally at a stalemate in the void above Fengyang Canyon suddenly raised their heads, and their extremely cold gazes were fixed on Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. "You're looking for death. Kill them. How dare you snatch the godly medicine? Die!" Boom! A series of roars were heard, and in an instant, a series of earth-shattering attacks were launched toward Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. These attacks were all from the hands of the ultimate rulers. There were even many top ultimate rulers and even some almost invincible existences among the ultimate rulers who attacked. In the face of the overwhelming attack, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the ruler Violet Eye's expressions changed slightly. However, they were not afraid. After all, the four of them also knew what was going on. Since they dared to attack, they were naturally prepared. This overwhelming attack was also within their expectations. Form the formation. Kill! Ruler Violet Eye let out a low cry, and violet divine power immediately began to surge from his body. He was not the only one. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves, Ruler Ninyang, and Ruler South Chasm also released their divine power at the same time. With the Ruler Violet Eye as the core, the four of them instantly formed a massive array. This array emitted a terrifying aura, causing the four of them to instantly become one. A formation? Jian Wushuang, who was watching the battle from outside the canyon, raised his eyebrows. "I almost forgot. Among the four of them, the Ruler Violet Eye is not only powerful, but he is also very proficient in the Tao of formations. Among the universe rulers, he is at least in the top 20 in the Tao of formations. The formation they are using now should have been carefully designed by the Ruler Violet Eye for the four of them over the years." Divine Marquis Qingfeng said. "Innate divine ability. Divine manipulation." Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves shouted, and the divine power in his body surged. At the same time, traces of universe principles were emitted from his body. Buzz! A large amount of divine light suddenly swept up, forming a huge defensive barrier in the surrounding void in the blink of an eye. This defensive barrier had also perfectly integrated with the array that the four of them had already formed. In an instant, it was as if an iron wall had been formed. Absolute defense. Saber seals the world. The remaining rulers, Ninyang and South Chasm, also unleashed their divine power and unleashed their defensive techniques to the best of their abilities, which were also perfectly fused with their arrays. Bang! 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 A series of earth-shaking explosions resounded through the void. The entire Fengyang Canyon was instantly covered and even drowned by endless divine power. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three shuddered slightly and their faces turned pale. However, the attacks that were performed by the many rulers were blocked by the four of them. The four of them were not hindered much. On the contrary, under the influence of these attacks, they were getting closer to the godly medicine in the valley. Now let's go in. There was no dejection on Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' face. Instead, he was ecstatic. After taking a deep breath, he took advantage of the impact of the attack and continued to shoot toward Fengyang Canyon. Charge! The ruler Violet Eye and the other two exchanged glances, then shot forward in unison. This scene caused the expressions of the rulers around the Fengyang Canyon to change. No one had expected that Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three would be able to block the attacks of so many ultimate rulers when they worked together. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the rest managed to block it? Even Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were surprised. I've underestimated them. The ninth Culpa King's eyes narrowed. The defensive array was designed by the ruler Violet Eye and the four of them. In addition to Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves's Divine Defense innate ability, the two are perfectly combined to form an absolute defense. In addition, the defensive methods of Ruler Jiang and Ruler South Qi are also perfectly integrated with the array. I'm afraid that even ordinary Supremes would need some tricks to break through the defensive power of this array. No wonder the four of them dared to stand out and be the first to fight for the godly medicine. The ninth Culpa King's face was a little cold. Indeed, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three knew that there were many experts present and there were many rulers' teams that were more powerful than them. Once a large-scale fight broke out, it would be impossible for them to get the divine medicine with their power. Thus, the four of them decided to take a gamble and seize the opportunity when no one was willing to be the first to take the lead to snatch the godly medicine. Previously, they had attacked together in detail. The array that the ruler Violet Eye had created for the four of them, in addition to Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' innate divine ability, divine defense, was specially used for defense. With the perfect combination of the two, even if they were to encounter an attack from an ordinary Supreme, they should be able to withstand it. With the help of Ruler Nine Yang and Ruler of the South, they should be able to withstand the first wave of attacks from the surrounding experts. As long as they could withstand this wave of attacks, they would have a high chance of snatching the divine medicine. Once they had the godly medicine, all they had to do was think of a way to escape from these rulers. They still had a high chance of success. So they made their move. After they made their move, they managed to withstand the first wave of attacks. Everything was going according to their plan. One had to say that Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three were very ingenious and they had found the right time. They were the first to rush toward the godly medicine, so they were naturally closer to it. After enduring the first wave of attacks from the cultivators, they burst out again. At this moment, it was already extremely difficult for the rulers to stop them. This godly medicine belongs to us now. After we obtain this godly medicine, we'll immediately leave the Tarot ruins. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three approached the divine medicine at their fastest speed, and the divine medicine was very close to them. This made them smile in surprise. They did not see the rulers around the Fengyang Canyon, who had been extremely anxious when they saw them going to snatch the divine medicine, suddenly turned cold. They even looked at Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three with pity. Bang! All of a sudden, an explosion came from the void. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three seemed to have hit an invisible wall and their figures stopped abruptly. What? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three's pupils shrank and they looked forward with rapt attention. A young man in a white robe with a large cloak embroidered with the word Great Void on the back of the cloak was standing in front of them. He had his hands behind his back and was looking at the four of them indifferently. The white-robed young man had a slender divine sword at his waist. Just by standing there, he gave off a sharp sword intent that made one's heart palpitate. This person's speed is incredible. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three were extremely shocked. One had to know that they were obviously the first to move earlier, and they were also the closest to this stalk of godly medicine. Meanwhile, this person before them was obviously slower than them, yet he was now blocking their way. It was obvious that the person's speed was much faster than the four of them. This outfit, is it someone from the Great Void Divine Hall? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' face darkened. I know him. He's Qing Shuzi, the current divine son of the great void divine hall. Ruler Violet Eye's gaze was extremely solemn. Qing Shuzi, divine emperor Thousand Leaves, the ruler Nine Yang, and the ruler of South Qi were all shocked. The great void divine hall was a major power in the universe. Every 1,000 chaos cycles they would choose a godchild, and this godchild would be the leader of the great void divine hall in this era. It was very simple to become a divine son. In the great void divine hall, as long as one could sweep through everyone in any cultivation level and become unrivaled, one would be the current divine son of the great void divine hall. In other words, Qing Shuzi's status as the son of God had come from killing thousands of rulers. He was a supreme expert at the ruler level and an invincible existence. However, although there were many ultimate rulers in the vast universe, and some of them were top existences, there were only a few who could be called invincible among the ultimate rulers. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the ruler Violet Eye were only close to invincibility, which meant that they were still slightly off from being truly invincible. However, Qing Shuzi was acknowledged by the universe as an unparalleled existence among rulers. He was much more powerful than Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and ruler Violet Eye. So what if he's Qing Shuzi? He's only one person, and he dares to block our way. Kill him. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' eyes were red, and there was a surging murderous intent in his eyes. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't care less. The godly medicine was right in front of him. He could not give up just because of Qing Shuzi. However, before Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves could do anything, Qing Shuzi's eyes turned cold and the divine sword hanging on his waist was unsheathed. Buzz! In an instant, an extremely dazzling streak of swordlight shot toward the four like a soaring dragon, tearing through the sky. With this strike, a sharp sword essence shot up into the sky and shattered the void. In an instant, heaven and earth fell into an absolute chill, and the chill grew. Jian Wushuang, who was in the void far away, saw this scene and his eyes suddenly narrowed. He could feel that the Wu Qi divine sword on his back was actually making a muffled sound. What a powerful sword technique! Jian Wushuang squinted. He was good at sword principle and had a high comprehension of the universe origin of sword principle. His swordsmanship was also quite good, so he could naturally see how amazing Qing Shuzi's sword was. Moreover, the moment Qing Shuzi displayed his swordsmanship, he could feel that the divine sword Wu Qi on his back was vaguely excited, could not wait to be unsheathed and fight with the divine sword in the hands of the Taishu divine son. Qing Shuzi is highly accomplished in sword principle and has a high comprehension of the principles of the universe. There was a hint of excitement in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Bang! In the Fengyang Canyon, Son of God Taishu's sword turned into a white-hot dragon that roared and slashed at Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. Although Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three had formed an array earlier on, it had already crumbled after withstanding the first wave of attacks from the rulers. There was no possibility of it forming again. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' gifted supernatural power could not be used again in a short period of time. However, the opponent was only Qing Shuzi alone. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three did not want to resist passively. Instead, they attacked in an attempt to force Qing Shuzi to retreat. Therefore, the four of them also launched powerful attacks at the same time, bombarding Qing Shuzi's sword light head-on. Bang! There was an explosion and the entire void trembled. Endless divine power swept out, forming a storm that filled the world. In the middle of the storm of divine power, a dense mist was rising. How is that possible? Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three's expressions changed drastically. The four of them had joined forces to deal with one of them. However, the moment Qing Shuzi's sword slashed down, the four of them felt that they could not resist it. After the attack, the four of them were forced back. Not only that, the sword light contained a strong power that hit their divine bodies. Under the power, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the ruler Violet Eye were better off. Other than spitting out blood, they were fine. They did not use up much divine power. Ruler Nine Yang and ruler South Qi were in a more miserable state. They were much weaker to begin with, and one of them had his arm cut off by Qing Shuzi's sword, while the other's divine body was crushed on the spot. However, the two of them were aberrants, and their divine power was much stronger than that of ordinary ultimate rulers. They were able to withstand this level of damage. However, Qing Shuzi was able to defeat the four of them with a single sword strike. This also showed how invincible he was among the rulers. Hiss! Many of the weaker rulers around him could not help but gasp at this sight. So strong! No wonder you're Qing Shuzi. He's too strong. The surrounding rulers were all secretly amazed. He had defeated four supreme ultimate rulers with a single sword strike, two of whom were near invincible amongst the ultimate rulers. Qing Shuzi's strength was indeed terrifying. Jian Wushuang, you're also an expert in sword principle. What do you think of Qing Shuzi's sword? In the distance, Divine Marquis Qingfeng's eyes lit up when he saw this sword. He turned his head and asked with a smile. Very strong. Jian Wushuang nodded and replied frankly. What if you're compared to Qing Shuzi? Divine Marquis Qingfeng asked. Jian Wushuang frowned and then said seriously, in terms of understanding of the Tao of the sword, he shouldn't be much stronger than me, but in terms of understanding of the laws of the universe, I should be slightly better than him. However, he's still an Omega-level ruler, and his divine power is quite a bit stronger than mine. If we truly were to fight, he would naturally be stronger than me. Jian Wushuang was telling the truth. In terms of power, Qing Shuzi was already at the invincible level among the ultimate rulers. Jian Wushuang was confident that he was not afraid of a top ultimate ruler because he had made a breakthrough to the level of a stage 4 great ruler, and his divine power was much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. He was also confident that he could even fight against experts like Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye, but the outcome was still uncertain. However, Qing Shuzi was much stronger than Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the Ruler Violet Eye. If he were to fight with Qing Shuzi, he would have to use the dragon-destroying secret skill, burn his divine power, or use his innate divine power to have the ability to fight. However, Qing Shuzi had only performed one sword move. If Jian Wushuang had a trump card, Qing Shuzi must have one too. That was why Jian Wushuang said Qing Shuzi was stronger. However, even though he was strong, Jian Wushuang would not be afraid if he were to fight with Qing Shuzi. Moreover, Jian Wushuang was sure that Qing Shuzi would not be able to do anything to him. After all, Jian Wushuang had a huge divine body and vast divine power. Among the rulers in the vast universe, except for the 9th Kulpa King, who had the battle strength of a supreme, Jian Wushuang didn't need to care about the other rulers. Although Qing Shuzi was strong, he was still much weaker than the 9th Kulpa King, who was a perfect life form and had mastered the divine kingdom of one thought. Of course, Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were just joking. Qing Shuzi is very powerful, but Jian Wushuang, you've only cultivated for more than 300,000 years and are only a 4th stage ruler now. However, your comprehension of sword principle and universe principles is no weaker than his. Once you grow up and reach the level of an ultimate ruler, it should be easy for you to defeat Qing Shuzi. Divine Marquis Qingfeng laughed. Jian Wushuang also smiled non-committally. Stop talking. We're ready to attack. The 9th Kulpa King looked forward and suddenly said. Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng quickly looked forward. In Fengyang Canyon, the situation had changed. After Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three were struck back by Qing Shuzi's sword, they were attacked by a large number of rulers. This time, they did not have any defensive arrays, so they could only rely on their own means to block these attacks. In the end, they only launched one wave of attacks. They had only taken a portion of the ultimate ruler's attack, but the terrifying power that hit them had instantly inflicted unprecedented heavy injuries. Fortunately, the four of them were all special life forms, so their divine power was stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Otherwise, they would have been killed on the spot by this wave of attacks. But now, more than half of their divine power had been used up. Retreat! Quickly retreat! Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves, the ruler Violet Eye, and the other two were terrified. They knew that they had lost the chance to fight for the godly medicine after Qing Shuzi stopped them, let alone now that they were severely injured. They had to leave immediately, or they would probably lose their lives here. However, even though the four of them had retreated and had clearly given up on fighting for the divine medicine, many of the rulers around them still had their eyes on them. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. The four of you have such a day too. 40 years ago, our team almost died at the hands of the four of them. Now that we have a rare opportunity, we can kill the four of them. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. The four of you won't be able to walk out of the canyon today. Quite a number of rulers continued to surround and attack Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. There weren't many rulers, only about 20 of them. Among them, there were rulers who had been plundered by Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three and managed to escape with their lives. 8 Cloud Demon Master from the demonic Rain Divine Kingdom was among them. There were also some who knew that they did not have the ability to fight for the divine medicine. Hence, they simply targeted Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. After all, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three were already severely injured. They had used up more than half of their divine power and their fighting power was not as strong as before. This was definitely a good opportunity to beat them up. The rulers who had been exposed by the four of them before naturally would not miss this opportunity. They all attacked, wanting to kill the four of them here. Bastard! Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the ruler Violet Eye's faces were dark and their expressions were extremely ugly. The faces of ruler Nine Yang and his partner were ashen as well, and their hearts were filled with terror. If they were at their peak, they naturally would not care about these rulers. But now, they were all heavily injured and could not use much of their battle strength. In this situation, the four of them were likely to die. At such a critical moment, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' eyes were filled with anger, and he suddenly let out a hysterical roar. Ninth Culpa King, Jian Wushuang. Divine Marquis Qingfeng. I know you're nearby. Are you going to just watch us die and not do anything? The Ninth Culpa King's roar resounded throughout the entire Fengyang Canyon. Ninth Culpa King? What? The Ninth Culpa King is nearby. A person's name was like the shadow of a tree. The group of ultimate rulers who had surrounded Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves were shocked and looked around. However, they did not see the Ninth Culpa King for a long time and sneered again. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. Give up your futile struggle. Today, this Fengyang Canyon shall be your burial ground. Ha ha ha. Ruler Violet Eye. I heard that you've trained in an extremely powerful eye-type divine ability for your eyes? Humph. Today I'm going to dig out your eyes while you're still alive. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. No one can save you today. The group of ultimate rulers sneered as they approached Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves. It had to be said that among the team sent by the Divine Life Palace, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' status was only second to the Ninth Culpa King's. He was indeed quite capable. As the ruler Violet Eye and the other two were panicking, Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves' face darkened and he shouted again. Ninth Culpa King, you and I are both from the Divine Life Palace, and you are the leader of this team. If I die here, do you think Supreme Bloodwave and the others won't blame you? After he finished speaking, a part of the void suddenly distorted and Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves was elated as he quickly looked at the void. With Ninth Culpa King in the lead, Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng behind him. The three of them formed a triangle and stepped out of the void. Ninth Culpa King, you're really here. Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves was overjoyed when he saw this. The eyes of the ruler Violet Eye and the ruler Nine Yang also shone with intense joy. However, before the four of them could speak again, the Ninth Culpa King's words made their hearts turn cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. I really don't care about trash like you. If it weren't for the higher-ups of the Divine Life Palace, I wouldn't have cared about your lives. The Ninth Culpa King's expression was somewhat unsightly. In fact, he, Jian Wushuang, and the other two did not want to show up so early, because he knew that once he showed up, he would be the target of public criticism. After all, his strength was there. The best choice was to hide in the dark and wait for the best opportunity to attack. However, they had no choice but to show themselves because of Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other three. Could not be helped. No matter how much they disliked the four people and how angry they were from the Divine Life Palace after all. Although the Ninth Culpa King was willing to watch the four people die, he had to consider the blame from the higher-ups of the Divine Life Palace. The three of them had no choice but to reveal themselves in advance. After the Ninth Culpa King glanced at the four of them, His gaze fell on the blood-red divine flower that bloomed on the cliff in the Nanyang Canyon. He said, "As long as the four of them don't die, I don't care about anything else. But I want that godly medicine. The ninth Kulpa King is indeed the ninth Kulpa King. We have not seen each other for 3,000 years, but he's still so overbearing." He actually asked for the supreme divine flower the moment he appeared. The silver rock at the entrance of Fengyang Canyon said with a fake smile, "Oh, you're not convinced." The ninth Kulpa King's eyes turned to look at the silver rock, and his eyes were cold. "Humph, ninth Kulpa King, I will settle the score with you sooner or later for the enmity from 3 million years ago. But what I want to tell you now is that you can't be presumptuous in this place." The silver rock's expression was uncertain. "You talk too much." Upon hearing this, the ninth Kulpa King sneered in disdain. Then, he lowered his head and looked at the other rulers in the Fengyang Canyon. He said coldly, "I want this godly medicine. Who wants to stop me? Or should I say, who dares to stop me?" As soon as he finished speaking, the entire place fell silent. Everyone who was caught by the ninth Kulpa King's gaze avoided his eyes and lowered their heads in silence. The ninth Kulpa King alone had actually suppressed the entire scene into silence. This is strength. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when he saw this. The ninth Kulpa King's reputation in the universe was too great. As an ultimate ruler, no matter if it was an ordinary ultimate ruler, a top ultimate ruler, or even some of the almost invincible existences among the ultimate rulers, they would be a little afraid of the ninth Kulpa King. Jian Wushuang was far from being able to compare with such power. Pa! 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 At this moment, a lazy clapping sound came from the crowd in Fengyang Canyon. "Ninth Kulpa King, I've long heard of your great name." A barefoot young man wearing a red robe with his hair tied into pigtails walked out of the void with an evil smile on his face. Behind him was a team of peak ultimate rulers in armor. They followed closely behind him, exuding a murderous aura. "The people from the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Those are the divine armor guards of the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Every single one of them has the power of a peak-level ultimate ruler. That red-robed youth from the Great Sun must be the ruler sent by the Great Sun Divine Kingdom," Zhao Feng muttered. "I've heard that he's always been unruly, bloodthirsty, and belittling others. He's hated by countless people in the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, but he's also extremely powerful. He did not expect. He actually came to the ruins of the Zenith. With this person around, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult for the ninth Kulpa King to get the divine medicine smoothly." No matter who obtained this godly medicine, looking at the current situation, we have no hope. The pupils of the various ultimate rulers, who had been silent with their heads lowered, shrank when they saw this. They then sighed. In the outside world, these ultimate rulers were the best among the ultimate rulers. However, in the starry ruins, where all the geniuses were gathered, they were not enough. You want to stop me?" The ninth Kulpa King looked at him, his indifferent face extremely cold. "It's just a divine herb that can increase the chances of breaking through to the Supreme Being realm. It's not a great opportunity in these ruins. It's not like we don't have it in our Great Sun Divine Kingdom. I'm not very interested in it." The red-robed young man shook his head. In the next moment, his lips curled into a bloodthirsty smile as he changed the topic. "However, I've long heard of your name, ninth Kulpa King. It's said that you are a rare perfect life form in the universe. Many people say that you are the #1 ruler of this era in the vast universe. I'm quite interested in this." Walala. The void twisted again, and 5 figures wearing long blood-red robes, hoods, and long sickles walked out of the void. The faces of the 5 people could not be seen clearly as the wide hoods covered more than half of their faces. They exuded a strong aura of death, and the long, sharp, and curved sickles in their hands made them look like emissaries from the netherworld rather than living people. "They're from the Blood Sky Palace. This is the 5 blood messengers of the Blood Sky Palace. This is—" The crowd cried out in alarm. They naturally understood these famous peak-level experts. This divine herb is for the Blood Sky Palace. Whoever blocks it will die. The 5 blood nether emissaries spoke at the same time. Their voices were hoarse, like the sound of iron pieces grinding together, and it was hard to tell if they were male or female. The crowd fell silent again when the 5 blood nether emissaries from Blood Sky Palace appeared. Whoever blocks it will die. No one doubted their words. Blood Sky Palace was notorious in the vast universe. Countless rulers and supremes had died at their hands. Even some top-tier supremes were extremely afraid of Blood Sky Palace. Although these 5 blood underworld envoys only had the strength of a peak ultimate ruler, they might not be comparable to an invincible ruler like the 9th Culpa King. However, when they joined forces, even the 9th Culpa King would have to pay some attention to them. If you want this godly medicine, you'll have to ask the sword in my hand first. The Taishu son of God, Xianxia, who had sent divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the other 3 flying with 1 sword, was handsome and expressionless as he walked over. The Great Sun Divine Kingdom, the Blood Sky Palace, and the Great Void Divine Hall. The experts of the 3 top forces stared at the 9th Culpa King at the same time. As for the valley, although there were still many ultimate rulers present, including some of the stronger ruler teams, these rulers all retreated to the side in tacit understanding when they saw this scene. They knew very well that with the Great Sun Divine Kingdom, Blood Sky Palace, Great Void Divine Hall, and the 9th Culpa King present, it would be difficult for ordinary ultimate rulers like them to snatch the divine medicine. In this battle, the protagonists were the 4 major forces that were currently facing each other. To be exact, there were only 2 parties that were facing each other. The Divine Life Palace, led by the 9th Culpa King, was on one side. The Great Sun Divine Kingdom, Blood Sky Palace, and Great Void Divine Hall had joined forces. They had no choice. In front of the 9th Culpa King, they had to join forces. The 9th Culpa King's eyes narrowed slightly, and a grave look appeared on his face. Although he was conceited, he was not stupid. The 3 forces had more than 10 peak ultimate rulers. Lord Jinan, Xianxia, and the 5 blood nether emissaries were invincible rulers when they joined forces. Now that they had joined forces, even he had to take them seriously. Off in the distance, the ruler Silver Rock was watching him like a tiger watching its prey. If he had the chance, he would strike like lightning. 9th Culpa King, what should we do now? Divine Marquis Qingfeng asked. The 9th Culpa King took a deep breath and replied, "No matter what, I must get this godly medicine." Then he turned over his right hand and a 9-leafed divine herb appeared. He looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Jian Wushuang, I know that although you're only a stage 4 great ruler, your divine power is 8,000 times stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. In addition to the power of will given by the laws of the universe, your divine power should be comparable to that of a top ultimate ruler. In addition to your comprehension of the laws of the universe and your gifted superpower, you're definitely not weaker than Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye." "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. He had to admit that he did have the battle strength to do so. "You also have a divine body that's 68,000 kilometers tall, and your divine power is nearly limitless. As long as an Supreme doesn't appear, there's basically no one who can kill you." The 9th Culpa King said again. "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded again. "This is a 9-leaf swordgrass. It contains an extremely high amount of origin power of the Tao of the Sword. I obtained it from a secret realm 10 chaos cycles ago. In terms of value, it's not much inferior to this godly medicine. As long as you help me hold off that son of God Taishu for a moment, this 9-leaf swordgrass will be yours. How about it?" The 9th Culpa King said seriously. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was shocked. He had heard of the 9-leaf swordgrass. The 9-leaf swordgrass was born from the heaven and earth, growing by absorbing the sword chi of the world. To a sword cultivator, it was a peerless treasure that could only be found by chance. If Jian Wushuang had this 9-leaf swordgrass, he was confident that his comprehension of the sword principle universe origin would reach a whole new level. At that time, his strength would enter a whole new world. "Sure." Jian Wushuang nodded. The 9th Culpa King smiled indifferently and directly pushed the 9-leaf swordgrass to Jian Wushuang. "Divine Lord Qingfeng, Help me block the 5 blood underworld messengers for a moment. I'll give you 1,000,000 universe origin stones. If you can get through this smoothly and return to the divine palace, I'll give you a top-tier law cardinal treasure. What do you think? Ninth Culpa King looked at Divine Marquis Qingfeng and said, 5 blood nether emissaries? Divine Marquis Qingfeng frowned and then laughed. These 5 blood underworld messengers aren't that strong individually, but when they work together, their combat power is no weaker than Qing Shuzi's. However, I may not have any other skills, but I do have some skills in holding people back. I can try my best in a short while. Although Divine Marquis Qingfeng was not as famous as Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and Ruler Violet Eye, it did not mean that he was weak. As one of the old ultimate rulers of the Divine Life Palace, he was stronger than Divine Emperor Thousand Leaves and the others, but he rarely fought. Furthermore, his ability to entrap and trap enemies was also one of a kind. Very. Upon seeing this, the Ninth Culpa King's heroic spirit soared. He did not expect Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng to defeat Qing Shuzi and the Blood Messenger. He only needed them to stall for a while. He was confident that he could defeat the Great Sun Divine Kingdom and kill both of them. At the level of an ultimate ruler, he, the Ninth Culpa King, was invincible. Absorb! The next moment, the Ninth Culpa King's big hand stretched out and directly turned into a towering giant hand, covering the sky and the sun, and grabbed at the supreme divine medicine on the edge of the cliff. Good! The red-robed Prince Jinan from the Great Sun Divine Kingdom suddenly broke into a battle-thirsty smile. He took the lead and charged into the sky, crashing down on the giant hand. Ha ha ha! Let me see if the Ninth Culpa King, who is rumored to have the battle strength of a supreme martial artist, is really that amazing. Behind him, 2 golden Dharma wheels appeared. They were like blazing suns and shot out a bloodthirsty red light. You're looking for death. Killing intent flashed in the Ninth Culpa King's eyes, and he pressed his hand down fiercely. In an instant, the towering giant hand that was originally grabbing the supreme divine medicine changed its attack and slammed down on Lord Jinnan. Arrogant. On the other side, Qing Shuzi sneered. He grabbed the hilt of his sword with his right hand and unsheathed it. A white-hot sword light shot out like a roaring dragon and slashed at the Ninth Culpa King. After this strike, Qing Shuzi did not give up. He took a heavy step and shot toward the Ninth Culpa King. No one is allowed to take what the Blood Sky Palace wants. The 5 blood nether emissaries spoke at the same time, their voices hoarse and strange. In the next moment, the 5 blood nether emissaries flashed and disappeared from where they were. At this moment, the unparalleled rulers of the 3 forces charged at the Ninth Culpa King at the same time. Bang! The Ninth Culpa King's palm slammed down, directly smacking Prince Jinan, who was soaring into the sky, to the ground. Just as Qing Shuzi's sword was about to hit the Ninth Culpa King, whoa, an equally dazzling sword light suddenly streaked across the sky and destroyed Qing Shuzi's sword. Then, a cold-looking figure in black stepped out and stood in front of Qing Shuzi. Your opponent is me, the black-robed figure said indifferently. A 4th stage chief ruler. Qing Shuzi's figure, which was rushing forward, paused. He then squinted his eyes and asked coldly, Who are you? The black-robed figure held the divine sword and replied calmly, Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang? I've never heard of it. Qing Shuzi shook his head. The next moment, his eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he drew his sword and slashed forward again. I don't care who you are. Whoever blocks me will die. Whoosh! The sword light burst forth. This stroke was much more powerful than the previous one. The sword light, which was about 30 meters wide, seemed to split the heaven and earth as it slashed toward Jian Wushuang's head. Then let's fight. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang laughed fearlessly and his eyes were filled with fighting intent. Split open the sky. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth and spat out 2 words. In an instant, a shocking sword rainbow was slashed out like an upside-down heavenly river, stunning the world. Pong pong pong. The sword light and the sword rainbow suddenly collided with each other. It was as if the sun and the moon had collided, and a loud rumble was heard. On the other side, Divine Marquis Qingfeng took out a heavenly halberd. His body glowed with green light as if he was the god of war from the ancient heavenly court. He blocked the 5 blood nether emissaries. Blood nether emissaries. If you want to get the supreme divine medicine, you'll have to get past me first. Divine Marquis Qingfeng smiled faintly as a towering battle intent exploded. At this moment, the battle erupted. Around the Fengyang Canyon, most of the rulers had already retreated far away. Only a few of the extremely powerful peak ultimate rulers still had some greed for the divine medicine and wanted to wait for an opportunity. In the canyon, an unprecedented battle was taking place. All kinds of sword light, secret skills, and unique skills gushed out one after another. As if there was an earthquake in the valley, countless mountains were flattened and the ground was blasted into huge pits. In the void, Jian Wushuang exchanged a blow with Qing Shuzi, the divine son of Taishu, and his face instantly flushed red. In the attack just now, I could feel that my comprehension of the sword principle should not be too different from his. My comprehension of the principles of the universe is stronger than his, but his divine power is much stronger than mine. Unless I use all my trump cards and stop suppressing the strength of my divine power, I have a chance of truly fighting him. Otherwise, I am definitely not his opponent. Jian Wushuang understood that with his current strength, he should be considered an expert among the ultimate rulers. However, he was still a little weaker than these invincible rulers. I'm still too weak. Jian Wushuang sighed. However, he was not depressed because he had never intended to defeat Qing Shuzi. He had only intended to stall him. Jian Wushuang was lamenting his own weakness, but he did not know how much of a shock his sword had caused to Qing Shuzi. He's only a ruler of the 4th level. How could he take one of my attacks? Qing Shuzi was shocked. Even though he had only used 30% of his power, he thought that a stage for great ruler would not be able to withstand it. One had to know who he was. He was the unrivaled figure of the Great Void Divine Hall, the absolute overlord of the ultimate rulers. Even if a top-tier ultimate ruler came, he would at least be heavily injured if he did not die from his sword. However, the person in front of him was only a 4th-stage great ruler. He was a small character with no reputation in the universe. Usually, he would treat such a person like an ant. If someone had told him before that a stage 4 great ruler could take one of his sword strikes, he would have taken it as a joke. But now, he had seen with his own eyes that a stage 4 great ruler had not only taken one of his sword strikes, but had also come out unscathed. How was this possible? You are Jian Wushuang, right? Very good. I'll remember your name, but it's over. Qing Shuzi's eyes turned cold. He held the hilt of his sword with his right hand and took a step forward. Boom! Qing Shuzi instantly turned into a stream of flowing light and struck down at Jian Wushuang like a divine lightning that could tear the dark night. Xing'an! The world suddenly darkened. Jian Wushuang raised his head to look at the invincible sword. His face was extremely serious. He did not dare to be careless at all, and his divine power that was 8,000 times stronger exploded instantly. That was not all. Jian Wushuang activated the power of will that was given to him by the principles of the universe, and his divine power increased again. Earth-protecting sword formation. A large amount of sword essence swept out and formed a huge protective sword formation in the blink of an eye, covering Jian Wushuang's entire body. The flowing light that tore the dark night had arrived and bit Jian Wushuang's sword formation like a huge dragon. Bang! In the next moment, Jian Wushuang flew backward and smashed into the ground, creating a bottomless pit. Smoke and dust filled the air. It's over. Qing Shuzi stood in the air where Jian Wushuang had been standing before and spoke expressionlessly. He could feel that his sword had broken through Jian Wushuang's sword formation and struck Jian Wushuang's divine body. If a 4th-stage great ruler were to take his sword head-on, he would definitely die. Qing Shuzi shook his head and looked at the other side of the sky. That place, it was the battlefield of 9th Culpa King and Jinnan. Bang, 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 bang. A series of deafening sounds rang out. The shockwaves from the battle between 9th Culpa King and Lord Jinnan directly set off a chaotic storm. Wherever the storm passed, countless voids trembled. It was enough to destroy ordinary ultimate rulers. In the center of the storm, Ninth Culpa King and Lord Jinan were like gods descending to the mortal world. Every time they exchanged blows, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Lord Jinan, you dare to stop me with this little strength? What a joke! The Ninth Culpa King smacked the Dharma wheel of Lord Jinan away with one palm. His eyes were full of disdain as he sneered contemptuously. His 9 unique skills were used continuously, like a storm, and slammed down on Lord Jinan. Now, he did not suppress his realm. He was more than 1,000 times stronger than the Ninth Culpa King that Jian Wushuang had met in the trial arena. Lord Jinan did not say a word, but his face was so dark that it could drip water. He had not expected that the Ninth Culpa King would be so terrifying. Facing the Ninth Culpa King, he even felt like he was facing a supreme being. The Lord Jinan can't make it. Qing Shuzi looked at this scene and could not help shaking his head. He could see that Lord Jinan had already used all his trump cards, but he was still crushed by the Ninth Culpa King. In terms of strength, the Ninth Culpa King was definitely much stronger than the Lord Jinan. It's rumored in the universe that the Ninth Culpa King has the battle strength of a supreme. Now it seems that it's true. Qing Shuzi squinted his eyes and quickly made a decision in his heart. He had to gather the power of himself, the 5 blood nether emissaries, and Lord Jinan in order to contend with or even suppress the Ninth Culpa King. Otherwise, once the Ninth Culpa King finished off Lord Jinan, he would probably be the next one to be finished off. Bang! He took a step forward and turned into a sword ray, ready to shoot at the Ninth Culpa King. However, at this moment, I told you, I'm your opponent. A clear and cold voice sounded behind his ears. In the next moment, an extremely sharp sword rainbow shot up into the sky like a sharp moon, cutting off his path. What? Qing Shuzi stopped in his tracks. He looked down and his face darkened. There, in a huge pit, the smoke and dust gradually dispersed. Jian Wushuang stood proudly with his black hair flying in the wind. He held the Wuxia divine sword in his right hand and pointed the tip of the sword to the ground. His expression was calm. The corners of his mouth still carried a faint smile. Qing Shuzi, as long as I'm here, you're not allowed to take even half a step in. Jian Wushuang waved his right hand and a bottomless ditch appeared in front of him and Qing Shuzi. Draw a line with a sword and teach you not to take half a step in. You're looking for death. Qing Shuzi was furious. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he swung his sword at Jian Wushuang. Swordsmanship, dragon's terror. Boom! At that moment, Qing Shuzi and the godly sword in his hand disappeared. In the next moment, a thunder dragon with thunderous roars poked its head out of the void. It opened its huge mouth and roared, shaking the world. Jian Wushuang, this sword is one of the strongest unique skills I've created after cultivating for a long time. It's enough to kill any ruler below the supremacy stage. You should be proud to die in the hands of this sword. Qing Shuzi's emotionless voice came from the thunder dragon. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up and he took a deep breath. Innate divine power. Original universe. Buzz. The surrounding void shook slightly. Then, a large amount of black air currents suddenly swept up and covered the surrounding void in the blink of an eye. The sky and the earth were completely dark. There was no light at all, and the entire world fell into absolute darkness. Secret skill, Dragon's Destruction. There was a flash of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes and the vast divine power in his body started to burn at a terrifying speed. His divine power burned madly, and the power that he could unleash instantly reached a whole new level. The original universe and the dragon-destroying secret skill were Jian Wushuang's 2 trump cards. At that moment, they were both used. With these 2 trump cards, Jian Wushuang's strength suddenly soared. He stared at the domineering thunder dragon and his expression suddenly became calm. He said in a low voice, Qing Shuzi, I also have a sword. Watch carefully. Whoosh! At this moment, the wind, the clouds, the dust, and the flying dust in the Fengyang Canyon all started to shake. At that moment, everything in the world seemed to be attracted, and all of them rushed toward Jian Wushuang's hand. The clouds in the sky, the howling wind, and the floating dust all turned into the purest origin energy in the world. Like the ocean flowing back and thousands of swords returning to their ancestors, they all gathered in Jian Wushuang's hand. It was so grand that it covered the sky and the sun. The rulers and the few people who were fighting around them could not help but stop what they were doing at this moment. They looked up at this scene with a strong sense of disbelief. In the end, the pure origin energy gathered in Jian Wushuang's hand and turned into a silver sword rainbow that was 1,000 feet long. This stroke contained all of Jian Wushuang's life's comprehension of sword principle and gathered all of his power. This sword had once shown its embryonic form in the trial arena. It had broken the 9-path unique skill of the 9th Kulpa King with one sword, shocking the entire Divine Life Palace. This sword was nameless, but it was Jian Wushuang's strongest sword. For more than 4,000 years, Jian Wushuang had never stopped studying it since he comprehended this move in the trial arena of the Divine Life Palace. After 3,000 years in the Tao Comprehension River and 1,000 years in Universe Boat, Jian Wushuang's comprehension of this sword move had finally reached its limit. Although this sword attack was not perfect yet, it had already revealed its edge. Slash! Jian Wushuang wielded the 1,000-foot sword rainbow and slashed down. His black hair fluttered in the wind as if he was a peerless sword god. Bang! In an instant, the 300-meter-long sword rainbow slashed toward the Thunder Dragon in the Primal Universe domain. The ground was split open with a rumble, and it reached 3,000 feet. The domain formed by the Primal Universe could suppress the opponent and strengthen itself. After entering the Primal Universe domain, the sword rainbow's power increased again. It destroyed the heavens and the earth, as if a disaster had descended. Rumble! The 1,000-foot sword rainbow finally collided with Qing Shuzi's Thunder Dragon. At this moment, the void twisted, and a huge shock wave spread rapidly from the point of collision, pressing the ground down 10 miles. Under this sword, time seemed to stop and space seemed to be broken. The Thunder Dragon that roared in the world only lasted for less than a breath of time before it suddenly shattered. Qing Taishu's divine son, Qing Shuzi, who was wearing a white robe with a large cloak embroidered with the two words, Taishu, suddenly retreated. Qing Shuzi slashed 3 times in a row before the sword rainbow was shattered. How is this possible? He lowered his head and looked at the thin line of blood on his right hand. He was shocked and angry to the extreme. This sword had actually broken through his Thunder Dragon and injured him. Even though it was only a thin line of blood, it had already caused him to be enraged. It had been countless years since he had become an ultimate ruler, and no one had ever hurt him. But now he was being wounded by a 4th-level ruler. What a disgrace! To him, to his pride as the divine child, this was a great humiliation. Jian Wushuang, I will kill you today. In the next moment, Qing Shuzi raised his head and stared at Jian Wushuang. The cold, killing intent in his eyes was enough to freeze the 9 serenities. If this child was not eliminated today, he would definitely become a great disaster in the future. As for Jian Wushuang, although he had forced Qing Shuzi to retreat, his body had also trembled a little. Although the sword had taken shape, it was not perfect, and he had not controlled it perfectly. As he performed the sword, he was also affected by the sword essence. I hope you can do it. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and looked at the 9th Kulpa King beside him. The 9th Kulpa King only needed him to hold on for a moment, but a period of time had already passed. During this time, Lord Jinan had been completely crippled by the 9th Kulpa King. Even his 7 divine armor guards were only left with 2 or 3 miserable ones. Jian Wushuang, hold on for another 10 breaths. In just 10 breaths, I will be able to get the supreme divine medicine. The 9th Kulpa King glanced at Jian Wushuang and said in a deep voice, No problem, he said. Jian Wushuang nodded. Bang! At this moment, Qing Shuzi had already arrived. 10 breaths? Jian Wushuang, you are too arrogant. Qing Shuzi's eyes were cold as he stabbed at Jian Wushuang with his sword. At that moment, he no longer regarded Jian Wushuang as an ant at the level of a 4th-stage great ruler. Instead, he regarded Jian Wushuang as an invincible ruler of the same level as him. He no longer held back any of his strength. Whoosh! Qing Shuzi's godly sword was like a venomous snake that suddenly slithered out at an unbelievable speed. Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. He raised the Wuxia divine sword in his hand and blocked the sword. Clang! The two swords collided, creating a violent storm that swept in all directions. The void under Jian Wushuang's feet exploded. Get lost! Jian Wushuang suddenly let out a roar, and the divine sword in his hand swept across the void in a beautiful arc like a peacock spreading its tail. Swish! Swish! The sword will was unleashed without restraint. With the support of the original universe and the dragon-destroying secret skill, the power of the sword was instantly boosted to its maximum. Qing Shuzi also unleashed his full power. However, Jian Wushuang's understanding of sword principle was not inferior to Qing Shuzi's. In terms of comprehension of universe principles, Jian Wushuang was even better than Qing Shuzi. The only thing that Qing Shuzi was stronger than Jian Wushuang was that he was an unparalleled existence among the ultimate rulers. After he performed the secret skill, he had extremely powerful divine power. However, after Jian Wushuang performed the dragon-destroying secret skill and the original universe, the power of the divine power was immediately wiped out. Jian Wushuang was not much inferior to Qing Shuzi in terms of divine power. Naturally, Jian Wushuang could fight with Qing Shuzi face to face. Bang! 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 Shocking rumbles and collision sounds reverberated in the void of Fengyang Canyon. The many ultimate rulers who were watching the battle were stunned when they saw this scene. A fourth-stage great ruler is actually evenly matched with Qing Shuzi? Who is this fourth-stage chief ruler? Where did this person come from? How can his combat strength be so terrifying? Everyone was in disbelief at this scene. A fourth-stage chief ruler was no different from an ant to these ultimate rulers. Normally, they could easily slaughter a large group of fourth-stage great rulers with a wave of their hands. But today, a fourth-stage great ruler had actually fought with Qing Shuzi, who was an ultimate ruler and had invincible combat strength. They could see that Qing Shuzi had already used all his strength, but he still could not do anything to his opponent. He could not even gain the upper hand in the battle. Such combat strength had completely exceeded their imagination. Impossible! This is impossible. Qing Shuzi was also shocked and furious. To be evenly matched with a stage for great ruler was definitely the greatest humiliation he had ever experienced in his life. What he did not know was that Qing Shuzi had already given his all. But Jian Wushuang still had some trump cards that he had not used. For example, he had not used his innate superpower, Life Shock. However, his only task was to keep Qing Shuzi busy. He did not have to risk his life. Moreover, the time of 10 breaths was almost up. Suddenly, he was startled. Let's go! An explosive roar resounded through the void. What? Jian Wushuang immediately looked over and saw that the 9th Culpa King had already put the supreme divine medicine into his bag. He had also rescued divine Marquis Qingfeng, whose divine body was on the verge of collapse, from the 5 blood nether emissaries and was rushing toward Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief. Since the 9th Culpa King had already obtained the supreme divine medicine, there was naturally no need for him to fight to the death with Qing Shuzi. The next moment, the 9th Culpa King arrived, picked up Jian Wushuang, and rushed into the distance. With his speed, even if he took both Marquis Qingfeng and Jian Wushuang with him, none of the ultimate rulers could catch up to him. The 3 of them would be able to escape unscathed. However, at this moment, 9th Culpa King, die! A strange figure appeared in the surrounding void without any warning. It was none other than the ruler Silver Rock. The ruler Silver Rock had a grudge against the 9th Culpa King. He had been waiting in the surrounding void for the perfect opportunity to strike a fatal blow on the 9th Culpa King. And now, this perfect opportunity had finally come. A golden spear appeared in his hand. At the tip of the golden spear, drops of purple-black venom dripped down, burning the void into poisonous smoke. Go! The ruler Silver Rock's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He aimed at the 9th Culpa King's back and threw the halberd. In an instant, this golden spear actually leaped in the void. With a shuttle, It had already arrived at the back of the ninth Culpa King and ruthlessly stabbed in. Clang! The golden spear hit the armor on the surface of ninth Culpa King's body and made a sound of metal hitting metal. However, the tip of the golden spear did penetrate the armor and entered his divine body. The ninth Culpa King's body trembled, but he did not turn back. Instead, his divine power burst out and he swept forward at an even faster speed. In the blink of an eye, the ninth Culpa King, Jian Wushuang, and divine Marquis Qingfeng had fled 1,000 miles away and disappeared from Fengyang Canyon. Inside the Fengyang Canyon, Prince Jinnan's red robe was in tatters, and his hair was disheveled. He was in an extremely sorry state. 5 of the 7 divine armor guards that had followed him had died in battle, and the remaining 2 were barely hanging on. Qing Shuzi's face was livid and gloomy. Among the 3 forces, only those from Blood Sky Palace were calm. Among the 5 blood messengers, a thin one glanced at Lord Jinnan and Qing Shuzi and said coldly. One bragged about how powerful he was every day and took the initiative to challenge the ninth Culpa King. In the end, he was beaten so badly that he couldn't even fight back. The other couldn't even deal with a ruler of the 4th level. What a waste. You! Qing Shuzi and Lord Jinnan's expressions changed drastically. What's wrong? You still want to fight? The 5 blood nether emissaries sneered with contempt. Lord Jinnan took a deep breath. If he was at his peak, he would not be afraid of the 5 blood nether messengers. However, he was now seriously injured, and it would not be good for him to attack now. What about you guys? The 5 of them couldn't even kill divine Marquis Qingfeng. How strong can they be? The Lord Jinnan sneered and retorted. What did you just say? The 5 blood nether emissaries narrowed their eyes at the same time and shot out cold lights. That's enough, the 3 of you. Now is not the time to argue. Are you going to watch as the supreme divine medicine is taken away? Right at this moment, the hawk-nosed, black-robed ruler Silver Rock walked over. They've already escaped. Do you still have a way? Lord Jinnan, Qing Shuzi, and the blood nether emissary all looked at the hook-nosed man. The ruler Silver Rock laughed. That ninth Culpa King was hit by my spear. He can't run far. My spear not only contained poison that could kill a peak-level ultimate ruler, but it also left an origin mark. An origin mark? The Lord Jinnan, Qing Shuzi, and the others were all surprised. Because the ninth Culpa King was in a hurry to escape, he could not completely remove the poison in the first place. I can find him based on this origin mark. However, if you continue to dawdle, I won't be able to find him again after the ninth Culpa King has removed all the poison and my origin mark. Ruler Silver Rock said. Duke Jinnan, Qing Shuzi, and the 5 blood messengers' eyes lit up when they heard the ruler Silver Rock's words. Very good. Then let's kill our way up now. This time, with the combined strength of the 4 of us. I don't believe that the ninth Culpa King won't die. Duke Jinnan's mouth curled into a sneer as he spoke with hatred. The 5 blood nether emissaries looked at each other, nodded and said in unison. The supreme divine medicine is mine, and the ninth Culpa King is yours. I don't want the supreme divine medicine or the ninth Culpa King, Qing Shuzi said, his face livid. But I want Jian Wushuang dead. Qing Shuzi's original target was the divine medicine. However, the battle with Jian Wushuang had become the shame of his life. He could not allow this disgrace to continue living in this world. Therefore, compared to the divine medicine, he wanted to kill Jian Wushuang more. When ruler Silver Rock saw this, a sinister look of delight appeared in his eyes. These forces came to an agreement in an instant. Under the lead of the ruler Silver Rock, they immediately set off to the place where ninth Culpa King, Jian Wushuang, and divine Marquis Qingfeng had disappeared. As for the rulers around Fengyang Canyon, seeing that the protagonists of this battle had left, they also left one after another. Of course, they all knew that the fight for the godly medicine was not over yet. After all, Lord Jinnan and the others had already caught up. As for the final result, no one knew. However, just the battle that had just erupted in Fengyang Canyon was enough for them to talk about with great relish. First of all, it was naturally the ninth Culpa King's supreme strength. The fact that the ninth Culpa King had such a great reputation in the universe and was considered the #1 ruler by many people had been completely confirmed by this battle. Lord Jinnan was an invincible master among the ultimate rulers, and he had a few divine armor guards with him. They were all top-tier ultimate rulers, but they had been defeated by the ninth Culpa King alone. This kind of strength had completely exceeded the scope of a ruler. The rumors outside that the ninth Culpa King had the battle strength of a supreme martial artist were true. Moreover, the battle between Qing Shuzi and Jian Wushuang had shocked everyone. No one had expected that Qing Shuzi, who could be said to be invincible among rulers, would be able to fight evenly with a fourth-stage great ruler. Even though they did not know the name of this fourth-stage great ruler, he had been deeply remembered by everyone present. On a mountain, Jian Wushuang and the other two temporarily stopped. Among the three of them, Jian Wushuang was the most relaxed. Although he had burned a lot of divine power when he performed the dragon-destroying secret skill in the battle with Qing Shuzi, he had a divine body that was 68,000 miles tall. The amount of divine power he had burned was unbelievable. The amount of divine power he had burned was nothing to him. Could be said that he had not suffered any losses in the battle with Qing Shuzi. Divine Marquis Qingfeng, on the other hand, was in a miserable state. He had to face the attacks of the 5 blood underworld messengers at the same time, but he could only barely hold on. In the end, he used up a lot of divine power and had less than 30% of it left. As for the ninth Culpa King, he had suffered a sneak attack from the ruler Silver Rock. Silver Rock! The ninth Culpa King gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His face was extremely gloomy. In fact, he had tried to find the ruler Silver Rock before, but the ruler Silver Rock was very clever and had approached him without a sound. At that time, he had just obtained the godly medicine and was in a hurry to leave. He had not noticed it for a while, so the Silver Rock had gotten it. The Silver Rock's move had indeed caused him quite a bit of damage. What a terrifying poison! The ninth Culpa King's entire body was already drenched in sweat. He had been fleeing all this while and had only relied on his divine power to forcibly resist the corrosion of the poison. However, now that he had stopped and wanted to figure out the poison, he realized that it was far more terrifying than he had imagined. This definitely isn't ruler-level poison. If I'm not mistaken, this should have been concocted by an supreme-level poison master. The ninth Culpa King said in a low voice. Supreme-level poison? Jian Wushuang was also shocked. He had once relied on that special venom to kill his enemies, so he was well aware of how terrifying it was. Under normal circumstances, if a ruler had reached the peak of the art of poison, the poison they concocted would be able to threaten the top and even the invincible ultimate rulers. If it was a poison concocted by a supreme being poison master, it would also be able to threaten a supreme being of the same rank. What the ninth Culpa King was suffering from now was a poison of this level. It's too terrifying. I've used up almost 40% of my divine power, but the poison hasn't been completely removed. The ninth Culpa King exclaimed. Jian Wushuang also gasped. The ninth Culpa King was a perfect life form. Although his divine body was not as shocking as his, which was 68,000 miles tall, the divine power he possessed was definitely 1,000 or even 10,000 times more than that of an ordinary ultimate dominator. Even so, in order to resist the corrosion of the poison, he had used up nearly 40% of his divine power. And the poison was not completely removed? It could be seen how powerful the poison was. Ninth Culpa King, is that a problem? Jian Wushuang looked at ninth Culpa King. Fortunately, it's me. My divine power is comparable to a supreme's and can resist this venom head-on. Moreover, my divine power is thousands or even tens of thousands of times more vast than ordinary cultivators. Otherwise, ninth Culpa King shook his head gently. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief. It was obvious that the ninth Culpa King was still able to completely remove the poison. This time, I've really lost half my life, Divine Marquis Qingfeng said with a bitter smile. His divine body was on the verge of collapse, but his face was a little rosier. It would take him at least 1,000 years to fully recover. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Ninth Culpa King and Divine Marquis Qingfeng were more miserable, so they did not suffer much losses. Moreover, in the battle just now, not only had he fought with Xianxia, a supreme ultimate ruler, and tested his strength, but he had also obtained a 9-leaf swordgrass. It was a huge gain. Although the battle in the Fengyang Canyon was risky, we all got what we wanted. A smile suddenly appeared on the 9th Culpa King's face. The godly medicine was already in his hands. With this Xianxia, he would have more opportunities to break through to the Supreme Being realm. All right, let's go find a place to hide first. After I've cleared all the poison in my body and restored my divine body and divine power to their peak, we'll continue our adventure. The 9th Culpa King said. Jian Wushuang and Divine Marquis Qingfeng both nodded. Just as the three of them were about to find a place to hide, a sneer suddenly exploded in the sky. Ha ha ha! 9th Culpa King, where do you think you're going? Upon hearing this, the 9th Culpa King and Jian Wushuang's expressions changed in an instant, and they quickly looked up. In the sky above them, Lord Jinan, Qing Shuzi, Ruler Silver Rock, 5 Blood Nether Emissaries, and 8 unrivaled ultimate rulers were standing in the void with their hands behind their backs, looking down at them. How did they get here so quickly? Divine Marquis Qingfeng's face turned extremely ugly. Logically speaking, the Taro ruins was vast, and these people shouldn't have been able to find them so quickly. Jian Wushuang and 9th Culpa King looked at this scene and could not help but frown. There was something strange. After they left the Fengyang Canyon, they had changed their direction dozens of times and deliberately avoided all the experts in the surroundings to come here. By right, no matter how powerful Lord Jinan and the others were, they should not be able to find their location. But now, hoo-hoo! Could it be the poison in my body? The 9th Culpa King's face sank and he immediately checked his body carefully. Sure enough, there was an extremely obscure mark in the part of the venom that was still in his body. The mark had completely fused with the venom. The 9th Culpa King had been so focused on resisting the corrosion of the venom that he had not noticed the existence of the mark. Silver Rock. The 9th Culpa King raised his head and fixed his eyes on the ruler Silver Rock. His eyes were filled with killing intent. At this moment, his killing intent toward the ruler Silver Rock had reached its peak. What's wrong? 9th Culpa King, are you very angry now? Very well, maintain your anger. Next, I'll make you feel pain and despair, and experience the pain you inflicted on me 3 million years ago. Ha 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 ha. The ruler Silver Rock looked at the 9th Culpa King, and the corners of his mouth slowly opened. He covered his face and laughed in a deep voice. He laughed so hard that his waist bent, and his eyes were full of crazy pleasure. 3 million years ago, his entire clan was exterminated by the 9th Culpa King alone. He was the only one left to perform a secret skill and escape from the 9th Culpa King's hands by luck, saving his life. The hatred of the two clan was absolutely irreconcilable. It had been 3 million years. He had been waiting for this opportunity for 3 million years. You're looking for death. The 9th Culpa King was a proud man. How could he tolerate such humiliation from the ruler Silver Rock? He suddenly wanted to burst out and kill the Silver Rock at all costs. Just as he was about to soar into the sky, a hand suddenly landed on his shoulder and gently pressed down. Don't fall into his trap. He's deliberately luring you to kill him. Jian Wushuang shook his head and spoke indifferently. The 9th Culpa King was so angry that he lost his mind, but Jian Wushuang did not. In the sky above them, Lord Jinan and the others had already formed a diamond shape, like a large net, completely sealing off the escape route of the three of them. Once the 9th Culpa King rushed up to fight with them, he would immediately fall into their trap, which was exactly what they wanted. Although the 9th Culpa King was strong, the poison in his body had not been completely eliminated, and his divine power had also been greatly damaged. It would be very difficult for him to fight with these 8 invincible rulers. We can't fight this battle. We can only run. Jian Wushuang sent a message. The 9th Culpa King took a deep breath. He was not a stupid person. After this impulsive momentum, he naturally calmed down very quickly. Jian Wushuang, if we continue to stay together, I naturally won't be afraid. However, the two of you might become my burden. So, I will use the divine kingdom of one thought to trap these 8 people. You and Divine Marquis Qingfeng can take the opportunity to leave. The ninth Kulpa King stared at Lord Jinnan, the Blood Nether emissary, and the others in the sky and replied. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and then nodded. He had never been a pretentious person, so he could tell that although he was still in his peak condition, he could not perform the original universe anymore. If he fought with Qing Shuzi again, he would definitely be no match for Qing Shuzi. Of course, with his life-saving abilities and his incredible godly body and godly power, these people couldn't kill him. However, Divine Marquis Qingfeng's condition was too bad. He could not be of any help and might even become a burden to the ninth Kulpa King. It would be better for the two of them to leave directly. Then you must be careful, Jian Wushuang said. Upon hearing this, the ninth Kulpa King looked at Jian Wushuang with a heroic smile and said resolutely, "Don't worry. I may not be a match for these 8 people when they join forces. However, if I, the ninth Kulpa King, want to leave, no one can stop me except for the supreme martial artist." This was his pride, as well as the confidence he had as the #1 expert in the ruler realm. Jian Wushuang looked at ninth Kulpa King's smile and was suddenly dumbfounded. From the battle in Fengyang Canyon until now, although he and the ninth Kulpa King had not made it clear, the two of them had gone through thick and thin together. One must know that before entering the Taro ruins, the two of them had been at loggerheads. Jian Wushuang, Divine Marquis Qingfeng, let's go. In the next moment, the ninth Kulpa King's eyes narrowed, and a fierce roar rang out between heaven and earth. One thought divine kingdom. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, an unprecedented powerful aura exploded with the ninth Kulpa King as the center. This aura was completely different from the aura of the ninth Kulpa King. It was filled with a feeling of the Great Tao's mystery. As soon as this aura appeared, the entire Taro ruins seemed to be unable to withstand it and emitted a ka-ka-ka sound similar to glass breaking. Black iron chains shot out from the void, covering the sky and forming a cold boundary that wrapped around the 8 of them. In that world, the sky and earth changed. Many mountains stood tall and rivers ran. It was like a world of its own. This is one thought divine kingdom. How is this possible? The ninth Kulpa King has yet to break through to the Supreme Being realm, so how could he have comprehended the one thought divine kingdom? Even a supreme martial artist can only control a divine kingdom of one thought after reaching a certain level. How could the ninth Kulpa King display a divine kingdom of one thought with the power of a ruler? Duke Jinan, Qing Shuzi, the 5 Blood Nether emissaries, and the ruler Silver Rock were all dumbfounded at this moment. One thought divine kingdom was a technique that even many supremes would find difficult to master, and rulers would find it almost impossible to comprehend. However, today the ninth Kulpa King, who was known as the #1 ruler in the universe, not only had the battle strength of a supreme, but he had also mastered the one thought divine kingdom. How far was he from being a true supreme martial artist? Under the 8 people's horrified gazes, as if they had seen a ghost, the ninth Kulpa King laughed wildly and his figure soared into the sky. Jian Wushuang, live well. I'll wait for you to become an ultimate ruler before fighting me. At that time, I won't lose to you again. In midair, the ninth Kulpa King took a deep look at Jian Wushuang, then immediately turned his gaze away. Without any hesitation, he rushed toward the 8 people of Lord Jinnan without hesitation. The cold killing intent in his body started to boil. Definitely, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Without further delay, he grabbed Divine Marquis Qingfeng and flew away. In a flash, Jian Wushuang left the mountain and headed to a place in the ruins that no one had explored yet. Boom! 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 At the same time, a battle broke out in the ninth Kulpa King's divine kingdom of one thought. This battle had turned the world upside down, and the sun and moon had lost their color. After the time for one incense stick to burn, the divine kingdom collapsed inch by inch, and the ninth Kulpa King disappeared. The ninth Kulpa King has been injured by the 8 of us. He can't run far. Chase him. The 5 Blood Nether emissaries' faces were extremely gloomy. At this moment, their black robes were torn and 3 of their black moon sickles were broken. The next moment, they headed in one direction at high speed. Duke Jinan's injuries had worsened. He took an extremely precious pill, exchanged a glance with the ruler Silver Rock, and also took a heavy step forward to catch up. Among the 8 of them, only Qing Shuzi remained. His face was cold as he looked in the direction where Jian Wushuang had gone. He said in a cold voice, "Jian Wushuang, I'm not interested in the 9th Culpa King. But you, I've said it. I'll kill you no matter where you go. You can't escape. Great Void Forbidden Technique. God Guide." Qing Shuzi bit the tip of his tongue and spat out blood essence. In an instant, the mouthful of blood essence twisted and condensed in the air, forming 2 small blood-colored words, Jian Wushuang. Gather. Qing Shuzi lowered his voice and suddenly, the 3 blood-red characters, Jian Wushuang, collapsed and turned into a small blood-red sword. The tip of the sword was pointing in the southwest direction and it kept trembling. Qing Shuzi's face turned pale. He could tell that the secret skill had cost him a lot. Southwest? Jian Wushuang. Let's see if you can survive this time. Seeing this, Qing Shuzi's lips curled into a cold smile. He took a heavy step and followed the blood-red sword. In the southwest direction, high up in the sky, Jian Wushuang carried divine Marquis Qingfeng and was rushing forward. Suddenly, blood gathered above his head and formed a faint blood-red arrow in the shape of a small sword. What is this? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. Looking at the blood-red arrow, he had a bad feeling. Jian Wushuang, run. This is the Great Void Divine Hall's God Attraction Forbidden Technique. Divine Marquis Qingfeng was very knowledgeable. After thinking for a moment, he recognized the blood-red arrow and his expression changed. God-guided forbidden technique? Jian Wushuang was confused. Divine Marquis Qingfeng's expression was ugly as he replied, "This God Attraction Forbidden Technique is one of the 5 great forbidden techniques of the Great Void Divine Hall. Anyone who is cast with this forbidden technique, regardless of whether they are in the sky or on the ground, or even at the very edge of the universe, will be found by the person who cast this forbidden technique. They will either be killed or the person who cast this forbidden technique is dead. Otherwise, the blood-red arrow will continue to exist. Furthermore, as the distance between the 2 gets closer, the color of the blood-red arrow will become more and more intense. In other words, no matter where you run to, Qing Shuzi will find you and fight you to the death." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's face darkened. He knew that Qing Shuzi would come after him regardless of the 9th Culpa King, but he did not expect Qing Shuzi to have such a strong killing intent. They were actually willing to pay a price to use this forbidden technique, which clearly meant that they would not rest until one of them was dead. What kind of enmity was this? What resentment? Speaking of which, I only blocked him during the fight for the godly medicine. Does Qing Shuzi have to be so persistent? Jian Wushuang frowned. What he did not know was that Qing Shuzi, as the number 1 genius of the current era of the Great Void Divine Hall, was even more arrogant than the 9th Culpa King. He was confident in his outstanding talent. In the entire universe, he did not care about anyone except the 9th Culpa King. In fact, from the bottom of his heart, he did not think much of the 9th Culpa King. In his opinion, the 9th Culpa King was only so powerful because of his perfect life level. However, in terms of other means, he was confident that he was not much weaker than the 9th Culpa King. But such a proud, peerless genius had been stopped by a 4th-stage ruler in front of countless people in the Battle of Fengyang Canyon. Furthermore, he had used all his skills, yet he could not do anything to that 4th-stage ruler. This was definitely the shame of his life, and this humiliation could only be washed away with Jian Wushuang's life. Because of this, he did not even fight for the divine medicine in the hands of the 9th Culpa King. Instead, he directly attacked Jian Wushuang. As long as Jian Wushuang did not die, he would definitely become Qing Shuzi's inner demon for the rest of his life. Qing Shuzi is too narrow-minded. Jian Wushuang could not help but ask, "Jian Wushuang, let's escape first. According to my guess, Lord Jinan and the others should be chasing after the 9th Culpa King, and only Qing Shuzi will be chasing you. If it's only Qing Shuzi, when I recover a little, we should be able to compete with him if we join forces." Divine Marquis Qingfeng said. Yeah, that's the only way now. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Bang! In an instant, Jian Wushuang took a heavy step forward and disappeared from where he was like a cannonball. Not long after, a white-robed figure with a sword on his hand flew over to where Jian Wushuang had been. There's still a large amount of divine power left in the air, so he shouldn't have gone far. Qing Shuzi muttered to himself expressionlessly. Jian Wushuang, let's see where you can escape to this time. The next moment, Qing Shuzi flashed and chased in another direction. In a dense forest, Jian Wushuang was moving quickly. Every step he took covered 1,000 miles. I'm getting closer. Jian Wushuang's face was extremely gloomy. The color of the blood-red arrow above his head became thicker. This meant that the distance between him and Qing Shuzi was getting closer and closer. He looked down at Divine Marquis Qingfeng and shook his head. In order to fight the 5 blood emissaries, Divine Marquis Qingfeng not only suffered heavy injuries and lost most of his divine power, but he also used some unique secret techniques. The price of these secret techniques was high, so he could not recover his strength in a short time. Even now, Divine Marquis Qingfeng had only recovered a bit of his divine body. He was still far from his peak strength. Jian Wushuang, why don't you put me down? I'm a burden to you. Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked up at him and smiled bitterly. We haven't reached that stage yet. Jian Wushuang shook his head and continued to rush forward. However, in less than the time for one incense stick to burn, Jian Wushuang, a cold shout exploded in the air. Jian Wushuang looked back and saw Qing Shuzi approaching him quickly with a sneer on his face. In front of Qing Shuzi, a small blood-red sword was floating in the air. The tip of the sword was pointed at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, give up your futile struggle and surrender obediently. I might even spare your life. Qing Shuzi said with a cold smile. You're noisy. Jian Wushuang's face was gloomy as he continued to rush forward. It's no use. You can't escape from the absolute suppression of cultivation. Qing Shuzi shook his head in disdain and sped up again, approaching Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's speed could not be said to be slow. With the support of a large amount of divine power, even an ordinary ultimate ruler could not compare to him. However, compared to Qing Shuzi, who was invincible in the ultimate ruler realm, Jian Wushuang's speed was far inferior. Boom! 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 The two of them, one in front and one behind, turned into a stream of light in the air, leaving a long trail of flames behind them as they streaked across the sky. They gradually left the central area of the Taro ruins and headed toward a remote area that no one cared about. Jian Wushuang, put me down. Otherwise, we will both die. Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang seriously. Jian Wushuang did not reply. Instead, he took a heavy step and shouted, Secret skill, Dragon's destruction. Boom! The vast divine power in Jian Wushuang's body instantly boiled and burned. His speed instantly exploded again and increased by a few levels. In an instant, the distance between Qing Shuzi and Jian Wushuang, which was gradually closing, widened again after Jian Wushuang used the dragon-destroying secret skill. Oh, it can actually be even faster. Qing Shuzi raised his eyebrows and could not help but be shocked. Jian Wushuang's speed was already shocking enough, but he did not expect that Jian Wushuang could be even faster. While Qing Shuzi was amazed, his killing intent toward Jian Wushuang grew stronger. This child must not be left alive. Qing Shuzi shook his head and sneered. Humph, Jian Wushuang's speed must have been obtained at the cost of some secret skill, right? I don't believe that he can keep using this secret technique. Qing Shuzi was not in a hurry to catch up with Jian Wushuang after he finished speaking. Instead, he followed Jian Wushuang from a distance. With the God Attraction Forbidden skill, he was not afraid that Jian Wushuang could escape. God Attraction Forbidden technique, not stopping until death. As long as Jian Wushuang was not dead, he would not be able to escape. In front, Jian Wushuang's face turned gloomy. Qing Shuzi was right. The dragon-destroying secret skill could indeed allow his power to burst out instantly. However, there was a time limit. Once his divine power was exhausted, Qing Shuzi would still catch up with him. Divine Marquis, how's your recovery? Jian Wushuang lowered his head and asked. All he could do now was to buy as much time as possible for Divine Marquis Qingfeng to recover. Then they would be able to defeat Qing Shuzi together. In such a short time, I don't think he'll be able to recover. Divine Marquis Qingfeng shook his head with a bitter smile. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang and Qing Shuzi turned into two flowing lights and streaked across the sky. As Jian Wushuang used the dragon-destroying secret skill and burned his divine power to increase his speed, the distance between the two of them grew. Not long after, Qing Shuzi was left behind and disappeared. However, Jian Wushuang did not look happy at all. The tip of the blood-red dagger above his head had not disappeared at all. This meant that no matter where he ran to, Qing Shuzi would be able to find him as long as the arrow was there. No, I can't let this continue. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with determination. It seemed like Divine Marquis Qingfeng would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Although his divine power was vast, he could not burn it without restraint. As soon as he stopped burning the dragon-destroying secret skill, Qing Shuzi would catch up. It was better to let Divine Marquis Qingfeng leave first since Qing Shuzi's target was him. Qing Shuzi did not care if Divine Marquis Qingfeng was dead or alive. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang said, Divine Marquis Qingfeng, we'll split up. Divine Marquis Qingfeng was taken aback and he shook his head. You're Qing Shuzi's target. If we're together, although I haven't recovered to my peak strength, I'll be able to make him fear me at all costs. However, if I leave, Qing Shuzi will have nothing to fear. Actually, Divine Marquis Qingfeng could have just left. Qing Shuzi did not even consider him a target. The reason why Divine Marquis Qingfeng did not want to leave was that he was worried that Jian Wushuang would not be able to fight Qing Shuzi without his help. However, Jian Wushuang smiled confidently at Divine Marquis Qingfeng's words and replied, Divine Marquis, don't worry. Although I'm not a match for Qing Shuzi now, it won't be easy for him to kill me. This Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang with hesitation. He could tell that Jian Wushuang's confident smile was not fake. All right then. Divine Marquis Qingfeng nodded. He did not have the time to be a girl at this critical moment. Since Jian Wushuang asked him to leave, he would leave. Jian Wushuang, take care of yourself. If we meet again in the future, we will definitely drink and chat merrily. After saying that, Divine Marquis Qingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang deeply before flying toward a mountain. I will. Jian Wushuang nodded. After Divine Marquis Qingfeng left, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. Although he was not as powerful as Qing Shuzi, it did not mean that he could not do anything to him. Qing Shuzi, since you're determined to fight me to the death, I'll have to prepare a surprise for you. Jian Wushuang's eyes were extremely cold, but he still had a plan in his heart. Not far behind Jian Wushuang, Qing Shuzi only glanced at Divine Marquis Qingfeng and Jian Wushuang when he saw them split up. He did not pursue them. Indeed, Jian Wushuang was his only target. As for Divine Marquis Qingfeng, he didn't care at all. However, the smile on Qing Shuzi's face gradually disappeared as he continued to chase Jian Wushuang. He frowned and said, How strong is Jian Wushuang's divine power? Qing Shuzi's expression turned ugly. According to his original guess, Jian Wushuang must have used some unique secret skill to increase his speed so rapidly. It should not have been easy to perform such a secret skill. At the very least, it should have consumed a lot of divine power. There was no doubt about that. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang would not have burst out with such a fast speed from the beginning. However, he had been chasing after Jian Wushuang for almost 4 hours and Jian Wushuang's speed had not slowed down at all. What kind of concept was this? Fine. I'd like to see how long your divine power can keep you up. Qing Shuzi snorted, and his expression became cold again. With the God Attraction forbidden skill, he was not afraid that Jian Wushuang would escape. Therefore, he was not in a hurry. In the blink of an eye, more than half a day had passed. For such a long time, Jian Wushuang had been performing the dragon-destroying secret skill and burning his divine power. If it had been before Jian Wushuang had undergone the life baptism, he would not have been able to withstand it for so long. However, after the life baptism, his divine body had grown to a height of 68,000 miles. How vast was the divine power contained in such a huge divine body? Even though he had been burning the dragon-destroying secret skill for more than half a day, he had used less than 10% of his divine power. Jian Wushuang kept moving forward. He did not know when he had arrived at the edge of the Taro ruins. Because it was remote, there were few supreme treasures and opportunities. Therefore, there were almost no experts wandering here. Just as Jian Wushuang passed by a mountain range, he stopped. It's almost time. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered and his body instantly shot down and landed on the mountain range. Stepping on the ground, Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked at the blood-red arrow that was hanging above his head. The color of the blood-red arrow had become very faint. Based on this, Qing Shuzi should still be quite far away from him. This was also the reason why he did not mind burning his divine power as he flew. He wanted to keep Qing Shuzi as far away from him as possible so that he would have more time to prepare. On the mountain, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, slowly sat down cross-legged, and closed his eyes. Immediately after, rays of sword qi shot out from his body and burrowed into the mountain range like an earth dragon. At that moment, Jian Wushuang no longer suppressed the divine power in his body. When he was fighting with Qing Shuzi earlier, he had been controlling the strength of his divine power to be about 8,000 times that of an ordinary cultivator. However, now it was equivalent to 13,500 times that of an ordinary cultivator. He burst out his divine power to the limit. 13,500 times of divine power, along with Jian Wushuang's understanding of sword principle and the origin of the universe, swept out madly. Then, under Jian Wushuang's control, the sword qi was hidden in the majestic mountain range. After the sword qi entered the mountain range, it was all contained and not released, as if it was quietly waiting for someone's arrival. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Qing Shuzi, I hope you like the surprise I'm giving you. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes slightly and a faint smile appeared on his face. After about an hour, a white-robed figure stepped on the void and approached step by step. His speed did not seem fast, but every step he took crossed 1,000 miles. Jian Wushuang, you're not running anymore? Qing Shuzi stood on the mountain range with his hands behind his back. He looked down at Jian Wushuang with interest, like a cat toying with a mouse. He was not worried that Jian Wushuang would escape, so he took his time. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged and slowly opened his eyes after hearing Qing Shuzi's words. A bright light quickly flashed across his eyes. Qing Shuzi, there's not much hatred between us, right? Why do you keep biting me? Jian Wushuang looked up at him and said indifferently, grudge. Qing Shuzi burst into laughter as if he had heard a funny joke. I, Qing Shuzi, don't need revenge when I kill people. Whoever I want to die must die. Qing Shuzi's mouth was filled with a trace of pleasure and mockery. Jian Wushuang's expression did not change. He nodded and replied, all right, he said. Jian Wushuang, you're just a fourth-level ruler. You should be proud that you can force me to this extent. If you were given more time, when you break through to the 5th stage or become an ultimate ruler, your fighting power might be stronger than that of the 9th Kulpa King. Even I would have to run away if I met you by then. Unfortunately, you're just an ant in front of me now. Qing Shuzi shook his head. Then, he grabbed the godly sword by his waist with his long fingers. Jian Wushuang, remember, this sword is called Jingchan. Die in peace. Bang. Qing Shuzi unsheathed his sword, and a crescent sword light instantly folded the void and slashed toward Jian Wushuang's head. Facing the cold sword, Jian Wushuang suddenly lowered his head and sighed. The next moment, he suddenly raised his head, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Qing Shuzi, you're the one who should die. Sword Qi, rise. Boom. At this moment, the sky changed color. The entire mountain range was like a landslide, and a loud rumble was heard. The ground began to crack, the sky began to change color, and traces of cold sword intent rose. What? Qing Shuzi raised his eyebrows and a look of confusion flashed in his eyes. Slash! As Jian Wushuang shouted, the majestic mountain exploded. 300,000 rays of sword chi shot out, covering the sky. At this moment, the void seemed to be torn apart, and a storm of sword chi was formed. What? Under Qing Shuzi's shocked and furious gaze, the 300,000 rays of sword chi gathered together like a long dragon that swallowed the sun. It hovered in the sky and blocked all the light. It roared and bit toward Qing Shuzi. Bang! What kind of scene was it when 300,000 rays of sword chi swept across? They were densely packed and covered the sky like 10,000 swords. Jian Wushuang, who was standing in the middle of the 300,000 sword chi, was like the sword monarch who held the power to kill. The 300,000 rays of sword chi were condensed by Jian Wushuang's divine power that was 12,700 times stronger. The explosion caused by it was enough to kill an ultimate ruler in an instant. This was the big surprise that Jian Wushuang had prepared for Qing Shuzi. Boom! 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 A clap of thunder resounded between heaven and earth. The 300,000 rays of sword chi slashed toward Qing Shuzi like a dragon that could destroy the world and a snake that could swallow the sun. Jian Wushuang. Qing Shuzi's expression changed drastically for the first time, and he roared. Bang! The next moment, the 300,000 rays of sword chi crashed into Qing Shuzi's body. Clang! 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 Qing Shuzi raised his sword to block the attack. The sharp sword chi collided with the body of his startling cicada divine sword, making a clanging sound of metal and sparks. However, Qing Shuzi only managed to block less than 100,000 sword chi before the shocking cicada divine sword was knocked out of his hand. Then, the 200,000 sword chi crashed into his body without any resistance. Qing Shuzi's divine body trembled like a sieve as if thousands of swords were piercing through his heart, making dense, muffled sounds. After 3 breaths of time, the 300,000 rays of sword chi finally disappeared. Jian Wushuang stared at the scene until Qing Shuzi's body fell to the ground like a broken bag. He finally heaved a sigh of relief. He believed that even Qing Shuzi, who was considered invincible among the ultimate rulers, would not be any better off when faced with the 300,000 flashes of sword chi that he had put in so much effort and carefully planned, which was unleashed with 13,000 times divine power and the burning divine power of the dragon-destroying secret skill. Time passed, breath by breath. The place where Qing Shuzi had landed raised a huge cloud of dust. Jian Wushuang did not dare to let his guard down. After all, Qing Shuzi was not only an invincible ultimate ruler, but also the deity of the Great Void Divine Hall, a top power in the universe. No one knew what kind of trump card the Great Void Divine Hall had prepared for him when they sent him to the Tarot ruins. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, the sound of blood being coughed up could be heard from the smoke. Jian Wushuang's heart sank. As expected, the 300,000 rays of sword chi were not enough to kill Qing Shuzi. The smoke and dust gradually dispersed. The place where Qing Shuzi had fallen formed a huge pit that was hundreds of meters wide. Qing Shuzi staggered up from the pit, looking extremely miserable. The white robe embroidered with the words Great Void on his body was completely torn and hung on his body like a piece of rag. His hair was all disheveled, and his handsome face was full of blood. He no longer looked like the indifferent and noble son of God. He was in an extremely sorry state. Sword! Wu! Double! Qing Shuzi panted heavily and stared at Jian Wushuang. He squeezed the words Jian Wushuang out of his teeth. Clang! He bent his waist and slowly moved forward. Then, he grabbed the divine sword Jingchan that was stuck in front of him. Like a demon that had crawled out of hell, a monstrous hatred exploded from his body. His aura didn't weaken much. Jian Wushuang looked at the scene expressionlessly, but he sighed in his heart. He had thought that even if he could not kill Qing Shuzi, he could at least severely injure him with the killing move that he had prepared with so much effort and divine power. However, although Qing Shuzi looked extremely embarrassed, his aura was not weakened much at all. In the end, it was still because his realm was too low. If he had not been a stage 4 great ruler but a stage 5 great ruler, he believed that that move would have been enough to kill Xianxia. Almost. Just a little bit more. I really did suffer a setback at the hands of a 4th stage chief ruler. Xianxia's eyes were fixed on Jian Wushuang. While he was shocked and angry, he also felt lucky. If not for the fact that the Great Void God Temple had given him a life-saving jade pendant that could resist the power of a ruler, he might have really failed miserably. The killing move just now had a total of 300,000 rays of terrifying sword chi attacking him. If he relied on his own strength, he would definitely be seriously injured even though he could survive. Once he was seriously injured, it would be difficult for him to recover in a short time, so he could only leave the Tarot ruins for the time being. Right now, even though he had protected himself from being severely injured by that killing move, he had used the life-saving jade pendant that the Great Void Godly Temple had prepared for him to use in the Tarot ruins. Xianxia lowered his head and looked at the diamond-shaped jade pendant that had been broken into 8 pieces in his hand. He could no longer suppress the killing intent he had never felt before. Jian Wushuang, I'm going to break all the bones in your body inch by inch and extract your soul from your divine body. You'll have to suffer the pain of being burned by the sword every day, Xianxia said resentfully. Jian Wushuang's face was cold. He did not even look at Xianxia. Instead, he looked at the void around him. Perhaps it was because of the simultaneous explosion of the 300,000 rays of sword chi. The void had been distorted by the impact. Gradually, an obscure space crack appeared. Spatial rift. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed. In the Tarot ruins, under the impact of the sword chi, a space crack suddenly appeared? Where did the spatial rift lead to? Jian Wushuang, in 50 chaos cycles, you are the first person to force me into such a situation. Good, very good. Xianxia's eyes were as cold as a poisonous snake's. He took a deep breath and seemed to have made a decision. His brows gradually furrowed and he said, Void Forbidden Technique, God's Wrath. Boom! All of a sudden, Xianxia's long hair flew up, and a fierce wind burst out with him as the center. Meanwhile, Xianxia's chi started to surge inch by inch. In the blink of an eye, it had reached a whole new level. In an instant, the terrifying power was like a tide that pressed on Jian Wushuang. After all, Jian Wushuang had fought with Xianxia head-on after he had used the original universe. They were evenly matched. Although Xianxia's power was strong, it was not enough to scare Jian Wushuang. However, Jian Wushuang felt suffocated by the power. What is this? Jian Wushuang's body trembled and for the first time, his eyes revealed a look of disbelief. If Xianxia's previous strength was 1 level lower than the 9th Culpa King's, then the feeling that he gave Jian Wushuang now was definitely no less than the 9th Culpa King at his peak. Xianxia had relied on the forbidden technique to possess the battle strength of a 9th Culpa King for a short period of time, which was comparable to that of a supreme. Jian Wushuang, you really deserve to die, Xianxia said coldly. Only he knew what price he had to pay to use the Great Void Forbidden Technique, God's Wrath. In order to kill Jian Wushuang, Xianxia was willing to do anything. Whoosh! Before Xianxia could finish his sentence, he had already disappeared.